across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Six, top of the morning to you. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast, and breaking at 6 on a Sunday morning, Donald Trump unseats a sitting president, effectively kidnapping Maduro of Venezuela and his wife as they slept in their guarded compound. Now, this was a bold and audacious military strike watched by the leader of the free world from a hastily improvised situation room in his Mar-a-Lago estate. What now for this failed socialist government of Venezuela? As the Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of the opposition celebrates the move, and as people take to the streets cheering on the collapse of this authoritarian regime, with a peace deal in the Middle East in the bag, with hopes of a deal in Ukraine, is the world now a noticeably safer place under President Donald Trump? Are the left going to have to apologise and say, I'm so sorry, we got it wrong about the bad orange man? Well, let's have a look at it. He's closed the southern border, making life safer for Americans and rescuing the economy. Energy prices have come down. He's brought American jobs back to the United States. He's ended wokery in America's public institutions. There's a peace deal in the Middle East. There's a peace deal coming in Ukraine. And now an autocratic monster in Venezuela unseated. What are your thoughts on this? 0344 499 1000. Is this great leadership, or is this once again America becoming the world's policeman? Is it breaking international law? Is it undemocratic? I want your opinions. Text the word TALK, your message to 87222. Leave me a voice note as well. My focus for the next 4 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. Now, you can listen to us on the radio. I'm delighted to have DAB Plus in-app and online as a way of listening to Talk Breakfast, or you can watch us because this is now a TV product as well. I've even brushed my hair and straightened my tie, producer Dean. All you do is head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Also this morning, a leading think tank anticipates that Britain's national debt will go from 100% of the size of the economy to 270%. Sorry, folks, socialism doesn't work, and that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch. A poor, indebted country is an unsafe one, and we are now unsafe in the hands of this Labour government. That is Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. It might get me cancelled today. Good. Cancel me, baby. Also this morning, could immigration naturally fall to zero? We've got the inside story. And as fresh polling shows Reform holding their commanding lead well into 2026, will the new year be a good year for Nigel Farage? Is Farage going to have a good 2026? What does he need to do this year to prepare for power? Because the polling suggests he's going to win. What does he need to do? Let me know. What do you want to hear from Nigel Farage, the man who would be Britain's next Prime Minister? Your job is to create a to-do list for the leader of Reform UK. 0344 499 1000. Tommy's on the phones today. I left my work pass at home. He had to usher me in. It was quite humiliating. I actually thought I'd been deposed, just like Maduro. Sat there in reception for about half an hour, glared at by a security guard who thought I was shifty, which I am. But I've infiltrated the building. I'm on air for 4 hours, and my God, I'm going to use it. You're listening to the home of common sense, as the saying goes. Let's talk. Fantastic show yesterday. Lovely to have your company. We're going to do it all again today, and I'm thrilled to be back at the home of common sense, and I'm delighted to say that I will be your best buddy every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Friday, Saturday and Sunday, forever. I've checked with the boss, and it is actually forever, which is unusual in the media. It's a great contract. It says forever in black and white, signed in blood. And I cannot wait to get to work. It's going to be such a busy year for you and I. And what I've got to do is make sure that your concerns, your issues, your worries are represented on the national television and radio airwaves. I am your mouthpiece, your representative. And the other big thing about this show, about Talk Breakfast, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., is that we're going to debate stuff. And no one's going to get cancelled for the wrong opinions. You could be a raging lefty or a big fat righty. I don't care. I want the battle of ideas. So do help me to do that if you can in the course of 2026. And do you know something? We're going to have a bit of fun along the way as well, because I don't care anymore. I can't be cancelled. I'm like that guy in the T2. Do you remember the Terminator 2? And you got the policeman and Arnold Schwarzenegger's firing his bullets at him. They just melt off his chest. That's how I'm feeling this morning. Sunday Express, captured. United States Special Forces take Maduro. Trump says we're going to run Venezuela. Would you like, answers on a postcard, Donald Trump to run Britain as well? What about a late night coup as Mr. and Mrs. Starmer rest in their beds in number 10? What about Trump comes and runs Britain as well? He could do that in his lunch hour, couldn't he? American elite special forces captured Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in a large-scale military strike that saw the US seize control of the country. Donald Trump said Maduro, accused of running a narco-terrorist regime, was flown out of the oil-rich nation's capital, Caracas, in what he describes as a brilliant operation involving a lot of good planning, a lot of great troops. I mean, it is quite the most remarkable example of statecraft and military expertise. For the US to enter Venezuela, another country, and to take out its leader in a bloodless coup is quite miraculous. They haven't had to kill Maduro, they've not had to shoot him, or even, essentially use much coercion. He's been taken in a bloodless coup, and it will have big implications for the world. It's bad news for China, and it's bad news for Russia. We're going to learn and come to terms with the full implications of this move in the days, weeks, and months ahead, because at the moment, I'm not sure anyone knows how this plays out, including the cervix-free Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. People, it was very funny watching him on Sky News. No, it was with the BBC yesterday. Laura Kuenssberg, who's one of the more acceptable presenters on the Beeb, I would say. I don't know what you think. Feel free to cancel me. I think Kuenssberg's all right. She's not perfect, but I don't think she's quite in the woke bubble that some of the others are. Anyway, Kuenssberg, she sat down with the PM and he said, I don't know what's happening and I'm waiting for the press conference. Yeah, good. That's what Europe's done to itself. We have emasculated ourselves. Macron and Meloni and Starmer and all of these European leaders, they are presiding over a pathetically weak continent now, with dwindling growth, high debt, low military spending, inflation, welfarism, wokery. Europe's a joke. And yeah, we're out. We left the EU, but we're still part of that woke lefty nonsense, right? That the whole European project is inherently, it's institutionally left-wing now. We left EU, but we've still got that mindset. And that is the topic of today's Dolan's dispatch, right? We need an economic, political and cultural revolution. And what it will involve is abandoning the kind of leftist groupthink that has destroyed Europe. So what it means is that people like the President of France, the Prime Minister of Italy, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, they've got to actually sit at home, turn on the telly like the rest of us, and they've actually got to watch Sky News, may God forgive them, to find out what the president's going to do. He doesn't even call anymore. That's how irrelevant Europe is. Now, I say that with no pleasure. I am a European, and so are you. We are all geographically Europeans, and historically too. And historically, Europe has been the great continent of the human story, with free markets and free speech, international trade, representative democracy, civilization, technology, the Industrial Revolution. Europe's pretty cool. It has the best history of any continent, but it's decided to check out and give up everything that it stands for, give up the free market economy and capitalism, give up the idea of robust borders. I mean, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people gave their lives to protect the territorial boundaries of Europe in the Second World War, and in fact in 2 world wars. And now in 2025, 2026, of course, get with the program, it's a new year, we don't have the borders anymore. So why did those men, it was mainly men, sorry about that, the facts don't care about your feelings, why did so many of those men give up their lives for a free Europe, which now has open borders? I agree with Donald Trump when he said, look, if you don't stop mass immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. He's right. So is he right about this? This invasion, this military strike in Venezuela, which has seen the president deposed. What I will tell you, I don't think it's a bad look for Donald Trump, because the Nobel Peace Prize winning opposition leader who came to Europe, she actually had to be smuggled out of Venezuela in disguise to receive her Nobel Peace Prize. She's really happy, right? And she's actually on the woke left. She's super progressive, and she's like, Donald, thank you. Donald, thank you. So is it time for the left to apologise to Donald Trump and say they got it wrong? Is the world safer under the Orange Man? Or, because this show, let me tell you, this is no echo chamber, Dean Spencer, is Donald Trump an autocratic monster? Is he a beast? Is he a threat to the world order? Some of the MAGA people, his supporters, Make America Great Again, they're not happy. They said, wait a minute, Donald, you said you were going to stay out of international affairs. You were going to be America first. I want your considered opinions on that. The Sunday Telegraph, Trump to run Venezuela. What a time to be alive. What a sentence. Trump to run Venezuela. Your list, please, of other places where Trump should be in charge. Just imagine, what is your fantasy headline? Trump to run Venezuela. Trump to run Wales would be quite nice, wouldn't it? As a start, dip his toe in the water. What do you think? Trump to run France? Oh my God. Just imagine France under the leadership of Donald Trump. Just think of all of the amazing gold buildings that would pop up. You'd have Trump Tower. What he would do, I think he would pull down the Eiffel. Because I don't like the Eiffel Tower. It's rusty, it's old, it's ugly, it's an eyesore. I'm going to get rid of the Eiffel Tower. And he put up the Trump Tower instead. The Sunday Times, we will run Venezuela, vows US after capture of Maduro. By the way, full disclosure, I don't know. I don't know about this Venezuela business. I know that Maduro was a bad man. I know that he stole the most recent election. I know that it was a kleptocracy, which I had to look up yesterday, and it means a regime which steals from its own people. So I know that he was a very, very, very bad man, and the people of Venezuela have absolutely suffered. By the way, what does that tell you about socialism? That an oil-rich state can become bankrupt. When Mrs. Thatcher said that socialists run out of other people's money, even when you give them unlimited oil, still they run it into the ground. The Mail on Sunday, America on the warpath, blindfolded and shackled Nicolas Maduro, the brutal dictator, worshipped by the left after being dramatically captured by US Special Forces in a shock and awe raid. And as the world reels, a White House declaration, Trump, now I'm running Venezuela. But my point to you folks is I actually don't know what that means, right, for the world, the Venezuela move. I don't know if it's good or bad. I know that Maduro bad. I know that Trump, leader of the free world, elected president. That's a good thing. But I need my eyes open about this. My mind is open. And you know we're going to get help from 2 people. We're going to get Henry. You've got Henry Bolton, haven't you, Dean? Right. Well, can you get me Martin Whittock as well? He's not easy to get, and we will have to pay because the guy's got bills. But I want to get Martin Whittock, who's one of the world's leading historians. And we've got Henry Bolton, ex-military, who knows his onions, former UKIP leader as well. A very, very nice man and a guy that has served this country with distinction. And I'm going to ask Henry and I'm going to ask Martin, if we can get him, what they think this means for the world. Sunday Mirror, Trump's blitz on Venezuela, US Special Forces capture Maduro, and The Sun on Sunday. American drug war blitz. Trump captures dictator Maduro, cuffed in pick after US strikes. Don, we will run Venezuela. Nicked is the headline. And I love the way that The Sun are calling Donald Trump Don. I think it's absolutely poetic. The switchboard is already starting to fill up. Is this Venezuela thing good or bad? And by the way, Nigel Farage, is he going to have a good 2026? You're in charge of his to-do list. What do you want to hear from him? Rachel says, good morning, Mark. Please don't stay off the airwaves that long again. I had withdrawal symptoms over Christmas. Rachel, thank you so much for that. As for Trump, says Rachel, I wish he would come and remove dictator Starmer and run the UK for us until Nigel takes over. What about that? An interim government from Washington. Don't give me ideas. Rachel, thank you for that. Listen, so much to get through. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. I've got a very important man in the studio next. We're going to break this down. Why does this Venezuela story matter to you and me?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:20. Lovely to have your company. Front page of the Sun on Sunday newspaper. American drug war blitz. Trump captures dictator Maduro. Cuffed in picture after US strikes. Donald Trump, we will run Venezuela. The leader of the free world last night hailed a stunning US attack on Venezuela, which saw President Nicolas Maduro captured. Blasts ripped through the capital Caracas in a 2 a.m. blitz on a military compound. Tyrant Maduro, accused of narco-terrorism, was reportedly in bed as he was seized with his wife. Donald Trump announced the US will run the oil-rich South American country. Reaction now live in the studio from political commentator and public relations expert Piers Pottinger. Piers, a very happy new year to you.
And to you, Mark.
Is it a happy new year for the people of Venezuela?
Well, yes, I think so. I think so because...
we don't fully know, do we?
We don't. And I mean, it's rather typical of Trump. It's a kind of... the whole thing is a bit like a movie. It's a mad Maduro world, you could say.
That's the headline the Sun should have had.
And I'm sure Jason Statham is already shooting the film of the raid. But
yes.
On a more serious note, I do think Trump got the wrong man. He should have come over here and got Starmer. It would have been much more helpful to us.
There are parallels. We are a failed socialist state, are we not?
We are indeed, and Starmer's response last night was absolutely pathetic. And to think our leader could say, oh, well, I'll have to speak to Trump and, oh, I don't know what to say, partly because his left wing are, of course, supporters of Maduro and were supporters of Chavez, both of them evil people who ran a terrible regime. The problem is, what Trump hasn't said is who is actually, when he said we're going to run it, who's going to run it? And also, it's not a regime change yet because Rodriguez, the vice president, and several other ministers, henchmen of Maduro, are basically running the place at the moment. And there wasn't celebrating on the streets, there wasn't rioting, there wasn't any kind of reaction immediately, the kind of reaction of unmitigated joy you would have expected. I think it's a very dangerous situation, and of course this isn't about drugs, despite what some of the headlines say. That's really a cover because it's about oil and it's about politics. In Florida, where of course Trump spends most of his time, far more almost than the White House, in Mar-a-Lago, which is in Florida. Florida is full of former Venezuelans who've been exiled and also Cubans who've been exiled. And Cuba plays a very big part in this because Cuba is dependent on Venezuelan oil. And Cuba at the moment will be very worried about this situation. Don't forget also last night, British Typhoon jets bombed a military site in Syria out of the blue. Now, these kind of raids that are happening around the world are, I think, very concerning. And the problem also about what Trump did last night was that it almost gives China an excuse to go for Taiwan, because Trump is really sorting out. You go back to a chap called James Monroe back in the 1920s, who said his policy was that America, the United States of America, basically is what it says goes for the whole of the American continent, and this is Trump and he actually mentioned the Monroe Principle last night when his long rambling tirade. I think it's good that Maduro's gone, yes, but it's what happens next is what we don't know. Now, the oil price on Monday, markets are expected that the oil price will go up because no markets like uncertainty. In fact, there's a glut of oil at the moment because the Saudis are producing tons of it, and most people think in the long term oil prices will come down. But there's no doubt the Venezuelan supply is very important. But more important is Tehran, where 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz, and Tehran was a big backer of Maduro. So the backers of Maduro were Iran, Russia and China, three hostile nations to the Western world. And this will rattle them on the one hand, but also perhaps encourage them in a bad way on the other hand. So I think this is a curate's egg of an event until we know more about the interim ruling of the country and also how the country will react. Don't forget, it wasn't universal that people hated Maduro. He did have some supporters. As in all these kind of countries, there are a lot of people who've lined their pockets thanks to Maduro, and some of them wish to continue that. And
because it's what they call a kleptocracy, which is an authoritarian regime which is corrupt and steals from its own people.
That's right. Absolutely.
And it's effectively under military rule. Economically, a basket case,
yes.
a failed state in an oil-rich country. Welcome to socialism.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's again another example of how socialism never works. Something that hasn't actually registered with our Prime Minister yet, despite the obvious his failed efforts so far. But of course, Corbyn has rushed to support Maduro and say this was a breach of international law, which I'm afraid to say it almost certainly is a breach of international law.
But who cares about international law anymore?
Well, this is the thing. What does it matter?
It carries no authority these days.
There's an international arrest warrant out for Netanyahu, yet there he is in the White House. There's an international arrest warrant out for Putin, yet there he is on a state visit to India. I mean, it seems international law is irrelevant. And that is also worrying, because there have to be some standards by which civilized people all agree to adhere to. Otherwise, we're just left with anarchy. Now, I mean, I have been worried about the state of affairs generally, particularly with, don't forget, there's a small war going on in Ukraine, which again is now looking, I mean, we still haven't resolved that. People, how many times have we heard they're on the about to have peace, it's about to be agreed? Nothing has happened. Putin is not going to give in. And the war in Ukraine is even more worrying now, and it's about time the spineless European leaders got their act together and started supporting Ukraine properly.
What does it tell you that the Prime Minister tells the BBC that he's going to wait for Donald Trump's press conference to find out what the plan is in Venezuela?
Well, I mean, so much for his special relationship, so much. But I mean, also, don't forget, he was supposed to be leading the coalition of the willing in Ukraine. I mean, he's been sidelined there. Trump sidelined him a long time ago. I mean, he's just a puppet. I mean, he can't lead this country, let alone a coalition. Starmer is not a leader, and he showed that last night by making those insane remarks. I mean, even if you don't know what's going on, you don't appear on television to tell everyone you don't know what's going on.
That's right.
I mean, we don't want that in a leader. We expect our leader to know what's going on. I bet the Foreign Office had a better idea of what was going on. Maybe he should have talked to them.
And privately, as a former human rights lawyer, Starmer will be horrified by this endeavour.
Of course. Well, he's surrounded by human rights lawyers.
And he's a globalist technocrat.
Yes, and he's a believer in international law. In fact, the law is the only thing he believes in. That's how he's made all his money. He surrounds himself with human rights lawyers. Everything he does is designed to support human rights lawyers, and meanwhile he's destroying the judiciary in this country, our legal system, by not only talking about abandoning jury trials for a lot of cases, but now the Calamity Lammy is talking about appointing magistrates aged 18. I mean, for goodness sake. I mean, one knows Lammy is at very best moderate, but now we know he's also off his trolley.
Most definitely. Lots of messages coming in at 30 minutes at 6:30 on a Sunday morning. And this from Neil. Good morning, Mark. Why would Trump tell the EU anything when the numpties acknowledged a Palestinian state that almost scuppered a peace deal in Gaza? Brilliant point, Neil.
Yeah.
However, a contrarian point from Trevor. Good morning, Trevor. Thank you for your text. Trevor's in Stevenage. Good morning, folks. Why isn't Trump being condemned for invading Venezuela like Putin is for invading Ukraine? Surely it's the same thing. Kevin in Barnstable. Starmer is a cowardly, useless, narcissistic twerp. He's overseeing the rapid decline of this country, and his cluelessness in the face of it is infuriating the public. Bill in Cheshire says, Mark, here's my ideal front page headline. Delta Force capture Starmer and remove him to Alcatraz. Lady Starmer thanks Trump. Christina, hi Mark, we should thank Trump. He's sending an important message. If you cancel elections, then watch out. Christina, you're so right, and that's maybe why he needs to swoop in and save the UK, because of course we've had so many elections cancelled for this coming year. This Labour government, says Pete, must be a kleptocracy too, because it continues to steal money from the British taxpayer and squanders it on outsiders who hate us. Peter, I can't disagree with a word of that. Sarah in Plymouth says Trump to run the UK. All small illegal immigrants sent back to small. I think what you mean there, Sarah, all small boat migrants. I don't think we'll just do a height.
No.
Yeah, like at Alton Towers. I'm afraid you're below 2 meters in height.
Exactly.
A small boat illegal immigrant should be sent back to France and no more arrive. Foreign aid replaced by optional donations. Good morning, Mark, says Sophia. I've decided to cancel my Reform membership now after that awful response from Nigel Farage in relation to the US removing Maduro from power. Support your allies and stop talking like Starmer. Kemi's response was a lot better. Yes, I don't think Nigel Farage was outwardly critical of the move, but he said it was unconventional, and I would say that it was coolly received by the leader of Reform UK. Is the right split on this?
I think it probably is a bit, because again, I think the real problem is we don't know enough yet about what's going to happen now. And also, I think, just to correct one point, Trump hasn't invaded Venezuela.
Yeah.
He hasn't sent forces in to take over the country or try to, and to gain territory. He's just gone in. It's a hit mission to remove an individual, which is what he's done. And he's used the bombing of military bases as a distraction while he was doing that. That's what it was. It's not an invasion as such. However, your point about the right, I think, is right in the sense that I'm afraid I think Nigel was being a little cautious because, and again, I think in this situation you have to be cautious. We can't just immediately say, yeah, it's a fantastic idea to go in and take out the leader of a country that was supposedly democratically voted in, by the way. I know it was a fixed election, everyone does, but on the face of it, he is a legal and democratically elected leader. So just to go in and take him out is, you know, if that happened all over the world, we would have a real problem on our hands. So, you know, anarchy is not a good thing. We have to draw the line somewhere. And even though the worthless United Nations, I'm sure, will condemn this, there's no point condemning it after the event, because the event has happened and Trump has done what may be in 1990, when General Noriega was also taken and kidnapped out of Panama. The Americans put in an interim government in Panama, and Panama now is a safe, secure country, welcoming tourists, and is a happy and successful place. So as a model, that's not a bad one. However, Panama is a tiny place compared to the nearly 30 million in Venezuela. And I think it's going to be a very difficult situation for this interim ruling. I mean, are they going to put in a kind of viceroy? Is Trump going to send in a sort of super ambassador to oversee the interim government? Because he kept saying, we will be running things.
I think he's smart, Trump, because he said, I don't want this surgical strike, which has been incredibly well executed, to be in vain.
Yeah.
And I think what Trump has, he's probably not across all of the detail, but he's got common sense.
Well, also, I believe that they were planning something like this in the days of Chavez, and they also had, after the event, what do we do? So I think there probably is a plan. It just hasn't been announced yet.
And what he doesn't want to do is replace this chap Maduro with just, you know, another similar figure.
Yeah.
In a sort of on the face of it, return to democracy, but actually
the leader of the opposition in Venezuela, Maria Cachado, she is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, something Trump is very jealous of. But I mean, it's noticeable he didn't mention her last night in his.
That's right. He said she doesn't. Later on, he said that she doesn't have a popular support or indeed the credentials to run the country. So she's not a shoo-in to replace Maduro. And at the moment, oddly, Maduro's deputy, who has condemned this move, is now in post, although, you know, the White House are in conversation with her. So the whole thing is very confusing. Welcome to Donald Trump. Briefly, what's interesting about Farage's cool response to this is it has echoes of the Reform leader's response to the Oval Office summit between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, which was obviously a bit of an unedifying spectacle. And Farage was critical there too, and it's a very good point by one of my listeners saying that Kemi's response has been in many ways less sceptical than Nigel Farage's in regard to this. Kemi, the leader of the Tories, says there's a lot of noise from people who couldn't find Venezuela on a map yesterday. This is clearly a fast-moving and extremely serious situation. I'm not going to rush to judgment or speculate on incomplete reports. I'm more interested in what Venezuelans risking their lives for democracy have to say. The UK's responsibility is to understand the facts, assess where our national interest lies, and consider the consequences for Venezuela's people and for regional and global stability. It's not for us to second guess from afar the motives and evidence behind these events. Let's hear what President Trump has to say shortly. I will also be watching closely what is said by Venezuela's democratic opposition. That was a very clear-sighted response from the leader of the Tories, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Kemi is emboldened now. She's got much more confidence. She's now on the front foot, having been on the back foot for a long time, and that was a decent response.
And no pearl clutching.
No.
And no wokery. And no old bad orange man.
No. I mean,
she's a pragmatist.
Yes, she is. She is, and I think you know, I think Nigel at the moment has, you know, he's peaked a bit. He's come off the top of his support.
Well, we'll talk about that before 7. Yeah, because
you know, but going back to Venezuela, the real point now is who is going to actually run this country. And Trump also talks very broadly about oil companies coming in and making money.
Yeah.
And of course, don't worry, American taxpayers, we won't need to pay for this because we'll make all this money out of the oil. Now, I'm not sure if I was a Venezuelan, I'd be terribly happy hearing that my oil is being taken by the Americans. You know, it's going to be managing the politics on the ground is going to be very complicated and elaborate. When the Americans took over Iraq, I was very much involved, and my firm, in helping them communicate with the people of Iraq, and in fact we organised the first election campaign after Saddam Hussein was toppled. So I'm very much aware of how people in countries that have been, if you like, taken over by America need very careful and management in terms of communication and actually mollycoddling, because it's a very, very difficult situation.
I will give you a broad brushstroke thought on this, though, which is if I was a Venezuelan, I would be happier today than I was yesterday. But let me know your thoughts. Yeah. Sophia says, and I just want to reiterate this, I've cancelled my membership to Reform after the awful response from Nigel Farage in relation to the US removing Maduro from power. Support your allies and stop talking like Starmer. Well, here's a question for you. Is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? More on this next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:41, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Mark, says John in Bury. I've done a fair bit of travelling throughout Europe in the last couple of years, and the change is unbelievable. It's become a cesspit for migrants and undesirables. You go in tourist areas and are smothered by migrants selling you rubbish that you don't want or harassed for cash. On your point, is Trump right about Europe becoming unrecognisable? The answer is yes. I personally would welcome a Prime Minister with the backbone that Trump has got to get things done. Hopefully reform will follow the example and stance the USA have taken and sort out our borders and get our country back. Now, this is the point, with European leaders sat there waiting for the Donald Trump press conference to find out what was behind the Venezuela move, Piers Pottinger. It tells us that Europe is in economic and diplomatic decline.
Yes, there's no two ways about it. It's obvious. And it shows that how, well, they're not only spineless bunch at the moment. There's one European leader who stands out amongst all the others, and that's Giorgia Meloni from Italy. She's tough, she stands no nonsense, and she is not afraid to speak up.
She's reduced illegal immigration by 60%.
Yep.
And she's also stabilised the economy and got growth going.
Yeah, I mean, she's the most remarkable success as an Italian Prime Minister.
Well, and also, unusually for an Italian PM, she's been in post for more than 11 days, which is quite an achievement.
It is extraordinary.
Well, I thought she was far right. I'm so confused, Piers.
Oh, she's far right. Everyone who, of course, is actually pragmatic and gets things done is far right. Whereas if you're a socialist, you live in cloud cuckoo land and you do things that haven't a hope in hell of actually improving one's life. And I mean, this is what Starmer does here. He keeps talking about reducing the cost of living and making people better off. He has no idea how to do that, and neither does Rachel Reeves. They've proved that with two disastrous budgets, and goodness only knows what they're planning next. I mean, it's just appalling the damage they're doing to this country.
Definitely, it's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch, which is the Adam Smith Institute, who are attached to this rather old-fashioned idea of capitalism and free markets. It'll never catch on. And they've anticipated that our debt to GDP will go from 100% of the size of the economy to 270% in the next couple of decades, which is a real worry. Let's take a couple of voice notes if we can. Can we start, if you don't mind, lovely Dave, with Michael's voice note?
Hello, Mark. Oh, good morning. I just wish that Trump could come and scoop up Starmer and his loony Labour Party so that we didn't have to keep bringing in those paedophiles and those terrorists and those shoplifters. And I wish that we didn't have all the murderers coming out of prisons, escaping. Just come and save this country from the lunatic that is destroying this country.
Michael, your language might have been robust, but some of the people that enter this country illegally are proven criminals, are proven sex attackers. It might be unpalatable, but we'll always say it like it is on Talk Breakfast. I'm so sorry, folks. The facts don't care about your feelings. More power to you. What a great voice note. How about this from Tracy?
Good morning, Mark. I think it's great news. I only just wish that Trump would come and take out Starmer and his bunch of planks. They're not even a front bench. They're planks.
Brilliant. Plank is good. And of course, you know, Tracy, you've coined a bit of a term there, which is a very resonant one here on this brilliant platform of talk. Pete the Mole, take it away.
Good morning, Mark. Well, as you know, the old saying goes, fortune favours the bold. And he's a very bold move there by Trump, and a fantastic one. Because look at how Venezuela has been for the last 30, 40 years minimum. It's a left-wing, failed state doing backdoor deals with China on oil. No doubt probably backdoor deals with Russia as well. I think now, right, Trump has put it square into the middle about you ain't messing him about. You ain't messing him about anymore. But the only downfall, I think, is there's going to be another excuse by the people that are trying to make money out of everything, trying to put the price of fuel up again for us. You know, all the profiteers out there were a situation which wouldn't have concerned us anyway, because this country didn't deal in oil from Venezuela. Just another rip-off for the ordinary person. But good on Trump. I just wish this idiot in number 10 would pick some backbone like that and look after the country first, rather than everybody else outside.
Cliff in Berkshire, good morning, Mark. Starmer has to wait and see what the EU thinks. He is, after all, their puppet and determined to drag us back into the EU SSR. What a lovely turn of phrase that is. I think that's going to catch on. Sharon, good morning, Mark. I really care about what Trump does to Venezuela? Hell no. I just don't want him to come to the UK and I just want him to come to the UK and sort out the mess in this country. Sharon, thank you for that. Another one, an unnamed texter. Labour are all gas and gators. We can't defend ourselves and don't deserve even a say in the courageous Trump project. Baz in West Bromwich. Why should Trump contact Starmer? Starmer and his cronies have made this country a laughing stock. What about, says Dale, the phone call that Trump had with Maduro? He said he would leave. Let him take 200 million and he would go. Have you thought about this, Trump? Trump set it all up to make it the United States look good, to get him out of the country. So therefore, Dale not happy with this move. Keith in the Philippines, let us hope that Donald grabs Starmer next and puts him on trial too. How about this voice note from Kate? Take it away, Kate.
Good morning, Mark. Kate, back on the Wirral now. Thank you so much for your company yesterday. It was much appreciated. Already up and out with the dogs. Just can't help but think, had the Democrats been responsible for the taking of the Venezuelan president, that there'd be very much backslapping, but I can't help but think there'll be much criticism and navel-gazing today on their behalf. I just can't believe how many double standards there are in politics at the moment. Looking forward to the show. You'll be keeping me company on my very, very cold walk here on the Wirral. Take care, mate. Bye.
Well, Kate, I'm loving your company as well. It's a thrill to have you listening. It's a thrill to have all of you watching and listening on DAB+, in-app, and of course watching on YouTube as well. There is no talk without its audience, and we're here to represent you and represent your concerns. And it's interesting, isn't it, Piers, because the issue you've got is that this is, an issue far away in a country that has bedeviled with the consequences of socialism. Why do you think it matters to my viewers and listeners?
Well, it matters because it affects the world. I mean, this is something that affects not just the United States and Venezuela. It affects the world because of the oil situation, because of the connections with China, Russia and Tehran, and also Cuba. But there is a lot of domestic politics attached to this move as well, because in the midterm elections coming up later this year, Trump will probably face a big backlash, and he needs to, while he's got control of both houses, he needs to do things now that he may not be able to do later on in the year, because the Democrats, to answer your caller's concerns about what the Democrats might say, they of course are saying nothing really at the moment, or not getting any mileage, because they're powerless. They're completely powerless and a spent force. But when the midterm elections come, the backlash against Trump from the domestic US voter, who is feeling the pinch because the economy isn't actually picking up quite in the way Trump had promised or hoped yet.
I think you're right. I agree with you. I think it's coming.
I think it will come, but not in time for the midterms to show the support that he hopes he might get. But in Florida, this will be, as I keep saying, very, very popular. And Florida's a key state. And Florida will be celebrating this in a big way. But again, everything depends on what happens next, and also whether this will provoke Russia or China into any action of any kind, and how will Putin feel about Ukraine now. Will he just think, I'm going to carry on, I'm just going to finish the job?
Yeah.
And that is the danger. And if the Europeans stood up to Putin properly, we might sort something out. The problem is, standing up to him properly could mean a major world war.
Yes, and we're, of course, militarily unprepared, because a poor country and a poor continent is one which is unsafe.
Tiny army. It's a third of the size of Turkey's, for example.
I mean, is that damning or what, considering the relative size of our economies? 6:51, this is Talk Breakfast.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Colin says, good morning, Mark. Maybe Trump could invade us and sort out this rotten government that we have here. Bring it on. Mark in London says, good morning. I had an interesting text at 6 a.m. yesterday morning from my Venezuelan friend who lives in London telling me what had happened and was also sending me pictures of what was going on as it happened. Obviously from her friends and family that were in Venezuela. She was really happy at what had happened. Her words were, I'm so pleased that this has happened, as he is a drug baron and my country will be in a better place. Her words and not mine. Thank you, Mark in London. Sean in Gloucester, as usual, Trump has actually done something. And whether you agree with it or not, the virtue signalling loony lefties can't cope. Keith Stalin has been figured out by Trump, who is now just ignoring this absolute nothing of a man. Interesting, isn't it? Because there is definitely strong leadership in regard to Trump's approach.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is his motivation, that this is a guy that does believe in democracy, believes in free trade, is against drug trafficking and wants to put his country first. Those are the headlines, aren't they?
Well, yes. I mean, if you look at it in that way, that is the positive side.
He's
to
not
all
an
of this.
international bad actor, I don't think.
No, I would agree with that.
He hates war, he
Yes.
hates death, he hates killing.
He doesn't want to get involved in a war, and as I said earlier, this isn't an invasion, this is a one-off hit. He's doing these one-off big strikes to show that they've got the power to do it. But also they achieve everything he's done does achieve quite a lot in a positive way, but this is a big one, and regime change normally means regime change. The whole regime has to go. At the moment we have Maduro's deputy, who I can't believe is impoverished either, running the country, and that I think must be a concern. And the thing that really concerns me the most is China. Will this give them they feel the kind of moral right to go for Taiwan? and Taiwan is incredibly vulnerable. And Trump's been very equivocal about Taiwan. They don't recognize Taiwan properly. They half acknowledge it because they don't want to upset the Chinese, who believe that Taiwan is still part of China. And it is going to be, if China moves for Taiwan, the world is really going to have to.
Well, this is why Trump wants to actually bring Vladimir Putin into the sort of the Western fold, because, and this is why he's saying to Russia, listen, you know, you'll be, you know, out from the cold, and we'll do business together, and, you know, we'll make billions. And that's what he's trying to do, is to essentially de-radicalize Russia and bring it back into, you know, the Western orbit. Again, the right motivation. Whether it will work is another question. This from Guy in Oxford, and he says, good morning, Mark, dear boy. I can't tell if you're serious or not. Farage's comments were quite right. He understands geopolitical. He understands geopolitics. Venezuela was proscribed. They owed the US billions in oil, fact, and the government were indicted 6 years ago. This is all part of the same war. Stifle China by pulling oil and preventing them getting fentanyl into the country where it comes from. Hence the ship sanctions, the false flag. Stop Iran getting heroin to Hezbollah, based on the northwest of Venezuela. Drug and people smuggling is their day job while not trying to wipe Israel off the map. Strong words are great, re Kemi, but Farage understands the bigger picture. The longer the tariffs on China, Russia and Iran go on, the easier it is to bankrupt Russia. Iran rising equals US tariffs. Russian economy smashed equals US tariffs. China equals hardest hit by Russian sanctions. China is funding 80% of the Russian war effort, including manufacturing weapons. The longer the Russian war goes on, the poorer China gets, making Taiwan safer. Chinese economy struggling. How long does China want to carry on funding Russia's Ukraine aims when their main objective is to gain financial leverage over the US and control the world economically? It goes on to say everything starts with what the US and China dynamic is. China are on the attack. Venezuela is a key part of this strangling. There you go. Thank you for that. More to come. This is
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
.703, I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. A happy Sunday, one and all. And if you didn't join me yesterday, let me be the first to wish you a very happy, healthy and prosperous new year. Breaking this morning, Donald Trump unseats a sitting president, effectively kidnapping Maduro of Venezuela and his wife as they slept in their guarded compound. A bold and audacious military strike watched by the leader of the free world from the Situation Room in his Mar-a-Lago estate. But what now for this failed socialist government as the Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of the opposition celebrates the move and as people cheer on the collapse of this authoritarian regime, with a peace deal in the Middle East and an agreement on Ukraine hoped for in the months ahead, is the world now a noticeably safer place under Donald Trump? And has he silenced his critics? Or is this once again America becoming the world's policeman? We get reaction from across the political spectrum. Also this morning, a leading think tank anticipates that Britain's national debt will go from 100% of GDP to 270%. That will be higher than after the Second World War. Sorry, folks, socialism doesn't work, and that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch. Also, could immigration naturally fall to zero? We've got the inside story. Now, my priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. My number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy is taking your calls today. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222, or you can leave us a voice note. And here's a question for you. As fresh polling shows Reform UK holding their commanding lead, will 2026 be a good year for Nigel Farage? What does he need to do this year to prepare for power? What do you want to hear from the man who would be Britain's next Prime Minister? Your job this morning is to create Nigel Farage's to-do list. So what's going on it? 0344 499 1000. As the saying goes, let's talk. And a big reaction to this conversation around Trump's move in Venezuela. Tony in Enfield says, "Good morning, Mark. I can't tell you how embarrassed I am to have such a weak and spineless leader for a Prime Minister as Starmer. I'm sure I'm not alone thinking this. Trump does what he says on the tin, whereas Starmer just sits there like lost property and comes out with, 'We must respect international law.' My blood pressure is going through the roof. A reform government cannot come soon enough." And how about this from an unnamed texter who says, "Good morning, Mark. Your guest Piers Pottinger of Bell Pottinger is a disgrace. Caused untold trouble in my country, South Africa. How can anyone listen to what he has to say? Absolutely shocking." Sam says, "Ask your commentator how many US Marines are based in Taiwan." That's from the Barnsley Bumpkin. And also we've got Bill in Cheshire. "Why should Trump have given advance warning to Starmer re his Venezuelan actions? After all, who bothers to talk to their doormat?" Well, look, I'll get to more of your texts in just a moment. Here are the front pages. The Sun on Sunday, American drug war blitz. Trump captures dictator Maduro, cuffed in pick after US strikes. Donald, we will run Venezuela. Donald Trump last night hailed a stunning US attack on Venezuela, which saw President Nicolas Maduro captured. Blasts ripped through the capital Caracas in a 2 a.m. blitz on a military compound. Tyrant Maduro, accused of narco-terrorism, was reportedly in bed as he was seized with his wife. Mr. Trump announced the US will run the oil-rich South American country for the foreseeable future. Sunday Mirror, Trump's blitz on Venezuela, US special forces capture Maduro. The Mail on Sunday, America on the warpath, blindfolded and shackled Nicolas Maduro, the brutal dictator worshipped by the left, after being dramatically captured by US special forces in a shock and awe raid. And as the world reels, a White House declaration, Trump, now I'm running Venezuela. Sunday Times, we will run Venezuela, vows US after capture of Maduro. Daily Star Sunday, US missiles blitz to overthrow President. Peace-loving Trump attacks Venezuela. Sunday Telegraph, Trump to run Venezuela. And John Bolton, writing in the Telegraph, of course, former Foreign Minister of the United States. John Bolton, of course, in the original Trump administration, although the two men fell out, removing Maduro alone would be a hollow victory for America. And the Sunday Express, captured United States Special Forces take Maduro. Trump says we are going to run Venezuela. Those are the headlines. I'll get to your calls and texts in just a few minutes, but with me in the studio, I'm delighted to welcome political broadcaster and public relations expert Piers Pottinger. Piers, what are the headlines from this story?
Well, the question, it's bold, it's brave. I think that most people will, civilized people, will sigh a big sigh of relief to see an evil tyrant removed. And I think if I was Venezuelan, I would be celebrating. However, at the same time, what does it mean in the longer term for the country, Venezuela, and its allies, and particularly China? China is the biggest funder of Venezuela. Venezuela owes China $61 billion, and China also has a lot of investments in Venezuela and has basically propped up Maduro, combined with Tehran and Cuba, and Russia. So you've got very much it's more than just a single tyrant being removed.
What do you make of Guy's message earlier in the show that essentially this is an indirect strike on China because it's going to hurt China?
Well, it is. I mean, there's no doubt
economically
that it is, in a sense, going to rattle China. It could provoke them, which would be catastrophic in my view. There's no doubt what Trump has done is a very bold but dangerous move. It's dangerous for the geopolitical reasons, but it's also dangerous because we don't know yet what is going to replace Maduro.
Is it more dangerous than doing nothing? I mean, what Guy says, everything starts with what the US and China dynamic is. China are on the attack. Venezuela is a key part of this strangling of the three big baddies, which is China,
yes,
Russia and Iran. And let's be honest, two of those countries on their knees.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to what he says. However, there's also a very big internal political dimension to what Trump has done, because of the midterm elections, because in his Florida base there are a lot of exiled Venezuelans and Cubans, and this issue what he's just done will win him a lot of support from those communities, and it will strengthen him in the eyes of many traditional Trump voters. And he needs a lot of support because at the moment the US economy is a little bit shaky. You've seen even though New York is always going to be a Democrat state, but you've seen in New York City an extreme socialist mayor, I mean, whose policies are not a million miles away from Maduro, I may say.
Similar name, Mandami.
Exactly. And I mean, is there madness in his method? Probably, because But he was swept to victory by a huge amount, even though there was a reasonable Democrat against him. There are some very, very difficult internal political situations Trump has to face.
Yes.
And while we see here all his foreign affairs stuff, we're not really focused on what's going on domestically in the US.
Well, that's right. The economy is growing at 4.4% in the last quarter, which is good news. I agree with you, Piers. I think it's going to grow, but inflation is sticky, and that's a tax on everyone.
And cost of living, you see.
Well, this is it.
And of course, our good leader, I'm sorry, I used the word good, I shouldn't have done that.
Please don't swear on the radio.
Starmer has is now talking about the cost of living and how he's going to sort it out, yet he doesn't seem to have any ideas about how he's actually going to do that.
Well, most definitely the ideas would lead to bankruptcy, I fear, and that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. We've got a voice note from Bridget, who I think speaks for many viewers and listeners to Talk Breakfast this morning. Bridget, over to you.
Good morning, Mark. Great show. It's Bridget here from a very, very cold France. My husband and I watched that brilliant press conference with President Trump and his team yesterday. And my hubby actually made the most brilliant comment when he said, isn't it so refreshing to watch a leader and to listen to a leader who puts his own people first? And he sure does that, President Trump, and well done for him. It would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if Starmer and his bunch of numpties actually put the people of the UK first. Anyway, Mark, have a good day. Bye for now.
Bridget, thank you for the voice note, your kind words about the show. And Bridget speaks for many that this story reflects just how weak and impotent Britain has become, and a lot of dissatisfaction out there with our Prime Minister.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, he's the most unpopular Prime Minister in modern times, and for good reason. I mean, he is a non-entity. I think even Conservative or Reform voters would rather see someone like Wes Streeting in charge. But again, the problem with this lot is there isn't a single cabinet member who's ever been involved in the private sector. They don't understand how businesses work or operate. So when they try and impose taxes on them or laws upon them to restrict their growth, it's because it's out of ignorance. They have no idea what they're doing. On top of that, they don't even run the economy, because now our economy is dictated by the Office of Budget Responsibility, who dictates what the Chancellor can and cannot do.
Who get all of their predictions wrong.
They get everything wrong, like the Bank of England normally seems to get their projections wrong. That's their job. They're paid to do these projections. Surely something wrong there, as they say. But yeah, I mean, the Office of Budget Responsibility, it has gone way beyond its brief, and it makes these public pronouncements, and it's telling our Chancellor of the Exchequer how to run the economy. The OBR isn't democratically elected. It's a bunch of ex-Treasury people who are clearly not very adept, because all their projections, they're constantly correcting it because they get everything wrong.
And they want to protect the status quo, which is a country that lives beyond its means, with the cult of welfareism, endless debt and ever-growing taxes, right?
Absolutely.
That is the social democratic status quo,
Absolutely.
which has been protected across Europe. It's only America that's pushed back now under Donald Trump.
Yeah, tax and spend doesn't work. It's never worked, yet the socialists have never heard of Einstein, who actually said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, making the same mistake, not realizing you'll get the same outcome. I mean, socialism has never worked, and the problem is Starmer doesn't realize that it never works. He lives in this absurd bubble in a world. I mean, he's so detached from reality. It's insane. It really is. And he's just surrounded by left-wing lawyers whose only concern is to actually bring in all the wrong people into this country. Our Attorney General defended Shamima Begum. And who
still has designs on returning to this country.
And yet our own Attorney General was her solicitor. And I mean, that is absolutely shocking to me.
Piers, what a thrill to have you back in the studio. Please come and see us soon. Happy New Year to you.
And to you, Mark.
We need your wisdom, your experience, your contact and your truth bombs, because he can't be cancelled. Pottinger is a player. He's a well-connected man, and it's always a thrill to have him in the studio. Dave in Bristol says, good morning, Mark and Piers. International law is now being used by people like Maduro and other autocratic regimes to justify and sustain themselves. Starmer does the same. However, when these regimes suppress or corrupt democracy, as has been the case in Venezuela, international law becomes a tool for the dictator to excuse their oppression of once free people. As with all projects set up by well-meaning people, international law, the United Nations, the ECHR, UN, CHR, they all seem eventually to be used by dictators and even organised crime, drug and people traffickers to make money, further their own self-interests, and in the process suppress and remove democracy, which should be the basis on which we should be living. Dave, what a very well-written and brilliantly put together text. You're so right about that. It's the law of unintended consequences of which the left seem to be past masters. And Mark in Selby says, good morning, Mark and Piers. Hearing President Trump and his team speak yesterday, he showed such pride for his country and its people. As a British patriot, I teared up, wishing we had a strong leader who did what he said and followed words with action. Keir hides behind international law while the UK is dying by a death of 1,000 cuts. Save us, Donald! You're our only hope, says Mark in Selby. Your calls next. This is Talk Breakfast.
You can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
and
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
As he removes a failed, corrupt socialist dictator from Venezuela, is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? Ivor is in Hampshire. Good morning, Ivor, and welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark, yeah, and Piers, yeah.
Happy New Year, big man.
And to you, both of you.
Well, thank you so much. Now, Ivor, your reaction to what's happened here. Donald Trump, an audacious swoop into Venezuela, removes the president, interim government now. What do you make of this story?
Very good, yeah, very good. And like the other people that's been phoning in, I was going to say, I wish he'd come and do it here with Starmer.
I know. I mean, this whole story doesn't reflect well on the Prime Minister, who had to sit and wait for the press conference to find out what the President was going to do next.
Yeah, he's just a joke, isn't he? He really is. He really is a joke. I mean, the way he's running the country is more like a carry-on film, really.
I agree, and it's a tragicomedy, isn't it? It would be funny if we weren't all paying the price for it. I think it just demonstrates how weak this country has become internationally and diplomatically, Ivor.
Dreadful. It's dreadful. I mean, really, I think what he's doing really is he's destroying this country. Every day he's taking a little bit more and a little bit more. He's making it worse and worse and worse. And I think that should come under treason, because he's doing harm to the country, harm to the people. I mean, look at all the terrible things he's done. I mean, he's shut down the industry's going. We've got no steel.
Yeah.
6,000 farms are gone. Net zero is killing everything.
We've got the highest energy costs in Europe, if not the entire free world, haven't we, Ivor? We've got inflation, which won't go down because of the inflation-busting pay rises and the big spending. We've got the debt. We've got unemployment back. And, of course, no growth.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just dead. It's useless. Well, just wish Trump would come in, take him off, like he did with the other bloke, blindfolded, and then mass deportation, get rid of all this lot we got in here. It makes me wonder, you know, whether he's setting us up to be taken over, because everything he does is good for the enemy.
Well, I certainly wonder, Ivor, whether we're being set up for some kind of economic emergency, because if we carry on at this rate with zero growth, with all of the debt, with the inflation, we will be bankrupt. And I just worry that with Starmer in number 10, he will therefore have an emergency budget and roll out some extreme measures. That is my concern. And he'll call it, Ivor, an emergency.
Yeah, he will. Yeah, he will. It is a worry. There's no doubt about it.
Is there a defence for the Prime Minister to say that we are weak on the international stage and our economy's in the toilet because of 14 years of Tory misrule? They've only been in for a year and a half, Ivor. That's probably not long enough to tank the economy, is it?
No, he can't go on. He can't go on blaming somebody else all the time. They haven't tried. Everything they've done have been deliberately done to do the wrong thing.
Well, whatever their motivation, things have got worse in the last 18 months, haven't they? That's provably true.
Oh, very true. Oh, yeah, a lot worse.
And what about, I mean, Ivor, can you compare the leadership of Trump to the leadership of Starmer? How do the two men compare in your view?
Oh, there's no comparison, is there? I mean, Starmer is just a useless, weak... Oh, he's just a waste of time.
And what is it about Trump that you admire or even envy?
Well, I mean, he does what he says he's going to do. He gets on with the job. If he sees there's something going wrong, he's straight on it and deals with it. You know, he gets on with the job. He can see something happening, like that, where he's just took this chap out of. Right, we've got to stop him now. Let's go.
And have you got any concerns, Ivor, about the US deposing the leader of another country and the kind of, you know, legal consequences of that and the political consequences?
Well, he said it's only an interim thing till he can get it stabilised, and then it'll be going back to the people, which I think should be okay.
Ivor, I love your call, and Ivor suggests that we need Trump to come in and rescue the United Kingdom. And he's talked about taking Starmer blindfolded in the dead of night. Should we spare Mrs. Starmer, though? I think we should, because let's be honest, she's suffered enough. Chris is in Epsom. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Mark. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, big man. Lovely to have you on Talk Breakfast. So I hope we'll have many conversations this year. What are your headlines from this particular story? Trump removes a foreign leader. Is it a good or a bad move?
I think it's a blindingly good move. Let's be fair. Since Chavros and then Mendoza, they have raped that country. They nationalised the oil. threw the American companies out.
Yep.
They've stolen the money from the people. They've kept them in poverty. They've fixed elections. They've forced people up and across the border, which has helped Russia and China in their attempt to destabilise America through the southern border. He's put a stop to that. Now, if it's handled right, and as your last caller said, that he hands power to the people so that they can have a democratic election which can be monitored properly and not fixed, it will send a message to the other South American countries, because don't forget, it's not just Mexicans that are trying to flood the southern border. It's the whole of South America. And most of the cocaine that comes from South America goes through Guyana and Suriname, French Guiana and Venezuela. They're the main export routes from South America. So he's putting a stop to that. He's going to worry a lot of South American dictators that are running their countries in a similar vein to Mendoza. I think the operation itself was incredibly well planned and well executed. I like everything. That's a great plan, greatly executed. Now we've got to see what comes after, and that's going to be the real test for Trump, not the military, because he does have a brilliantly good military planning, and CIA and the rest of the DEA and the rest of them. Now it's going to be how do they manage to give the country back to the people of Venezuela. I mean, Caracas was a wonderful place. 25 years ago, I used to go there every few weeks, and it's a wonderful country. And I hope it returns to the way it was in the early 90s when I used to visit there quite often.
What does it tell us about unbridled socialism that an oil-rich country can become bankrupt?
Oh, it's not unbridled socialism. It was a kleptocracy. I mean, they just stole the money from the people under the badge of socialism. And this is unfortunately the problem with socialism. And when you bring it up to people like Starmer and the rest of his ilk, the international lawyers, they say, "Oh, well, it's because it's never been done properly." That's always the answer.
They always, yeah. We needed more power. We needed more control.
I'm a third-generation Tory, now a Reform member. I believe in a strong trading nation-state that also looks after its own people that aren't capable of looking after themselves to give themselves some sort of decent life. But I do not believe in this open borders, bringing everybody in. Now the plan is to give all these illegal immigrants the new council houses that are being built. But what about the generations that have lived here? I came up in a generation of, as you became an adult, you applied and hopefully got a council place, and then you built yourself a life, and then you moved on from that. That's all stopped. There's no council houses for the indigenous population. They're now going to give the brand new houses, as they already are in some areas, to these illegal immigrants that have come here, given nothing to this country, absolutely hate us, want to take over and implement Sharia law and everything that they said they'd run away from. Half of them that come here and claim persecution in their own country, as soon as they get indefinite leave to remain and documentation, they go back to their country for a holiday.
Correct.
It's bloody ridiculous.
Yeah, everything you said is provably true. There was a guy that was fleeing terror and persecution in Afghanistan and returned there for a nice Easter trip to hang out with his mother and enjoy a roast chicken. You couldn't make it up, could you, Chris? Well, listen, you're no chicken, let me tell you. I loved your comments there, Chris, and please call me again soon. Look forward to many conversations. Have a brilliant Sunday. Chris in Epsom there, who broadly supports Trump's move in deposing the leader of Venezuela. Has Donald Trump made the world a safer place? This is a voice note from Richard.
Hi Mark, Richard from Telford. I doubt you'll play this, but I just want to put a voice of sanity to all this mad talk going on about Venezuela. I'd like people just to remember it's very easy to overthrow a head of a state and try for regime change. The Americans did it in Iraq, they did it in Syria, Libya, and also Afghanistan, and that all ended well, didn't it? People aren't going to be so jumping up and down and joyous when Americans start coming back in body bags. This is going to be a rerun of what happened in Vietnam, and people are so stupid that they can't see through it. Thanks, Mark, but as I say, I know you won't play this.
No, listen, Richard, I always will. It's the same with the texts, you know. I often get a message and you'll say, look, I don't think you'll read this out or you won't play this. The only message I won't read out is if it breaks the law and says that, I don't know, you know, Keir Starmer's only got one leg or something, you know, and I've got to make sure that we have the facts, and you can't lie, you can't say something that's not true. Above and beyond that, all opinions are welcome, and no one gets cancelled, not on my watch. Folks, here's a big story for you. Could immigration fall to zero in the years ahead? I'll be asking the ex-leader of UKIP next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:34. Lovely to have your company. Dolan's Dispatch coming at 9 a.m. We're going to do Dolan's Dispatch at 9 every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. That's a new fixture, and I'm delighted to say that I'll be on air with you for the whole of 2026 from those hours, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. There is no talk without you, and I'm here to represent your views. And I'll tell you something, this will catch your eye. And this is from Fraser Nelson, who's a journalist writing for the Times newspaper today. And he's tweeted about this on X. And he said the most overlooked fact in UK politics is that migration is plunging. He writes, it could hit tens of thousands this year, perhaps even net zero. This would be a political game changer, and Starmer has all the tools to make it happen. Could we have net zero immigration? Let's get the views now of Henry Bolton, former leader of UKIP. Of course, he served in the military as well. He's a broadcaster, political commentator, and much besides. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning, Mark. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you. I wish you and your dearest and nearest a very good 2026. This is an interesting story. What do you make of it?
Yeah, the Conservative government introduced a number of changes to the visa regime. For example, restrictions on dependents of care workers coming to the UK, this sort of thing. And that has dramatically pushed down the figures. It's not that those moves alone are not going to take them very much further, although probably a little bit further down. Does the government, does Keir Starmer have all the sort of the tools available to drive them down to net zero? The answer is yes, but is he likely to use them? No, he's not. And the reason I say that is to do that, you have to start to introduce fundamental changes in the framing of UK legislation and the whole process of asylum claims. And you have to do what Denmark has done, which is basically say asylum is not a path to citizenship. It is not a path to indefinite leave to remain. It is simply a temporary refuge until such time as you can go home, whenever that may be. And so there's always a restriction or a limitation on the benefit, if you like, that somebody has, a refugee or an asylum seeker or an economic migrant, to moving to Denmark on a long-term basis and seeing that as a long-term sort of plan for their future. In the UK, it is predicated on the idea that if we're going to give you refuge, we're happy to keep you here ad infinitum. You can stay, you can be. It's a path to British citizenship. Now, that's been undermined slightly as well by recent changes, but none of these are really decisive changes. So, yes, I think it'll drive down a little bit further, but it's not going to go to zero. But it could do if the government wanted to.
Yes, Henry, it's devastating to think that net zero immigration is in our gift, and under this Prime Minister, we likely won't take it. Yeah. How would net zero immigration benefit the country? Imagine projecting over 5 to 10 years. If things were to stabilise, what would that do for Britain?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Mark, because I'm not sure that necessarily we want net zero. There might be occasions when we want to go, we want to go below that, and we want to, or there might be occasions where we want immigration. And if we rewind a bit, people will probably recall that the Conservative government introduced a points-based system. Now, the idea of a points-based system is that you've got a constant analysis going on. Who do we need? What skills do we need? Where do we want to get them from? And then you award skills based on the country's needs, or you don't, depending on the lack of need, if that makes sense. If you might want dentists, so you award points for people who apply to come to the UK. They're qualified dentists, but then you have enough dentists, so you don't want any more, so you reduce the number of points. Well, the UK system, utterly bizarrely, and I warned about this at the time, did not build in that flexibility, that adaptability. So it now takes effectively an act of parliament if you want to change the points that you award, or at least secondary legislation, which makes the whole thing very, very heavy and removes the agility, which is the whole point of the whole thing. So so the answer is, what I say today about what the country's requirements are. It may change 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 2 years down the road, but we need the agility to say, OK, close the door now, we've got enough, or open the door, we want more. And that's based on the country's needs. What
we do need, and I agree with you about points-based, Henry, but the country just needs to recalibrate, doesn't it? What are the figures? In the last 15 years, we've had, I think, around 10 million people enter the country.
Probably around that.
Legally, about that, which is a shocking, seismic change that no one voted for. Don't we need just 5 years to catch up?
Yes, I think we do. And I think even in terms of what I say about dentists or engineers or whatever it might be, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland itself needs to understand where its baseline is. How many engineers and scientists are we producing that go into the UK sort of employment sort of world? We really don't know, because this huge rate of immigration is not only, we need to sort this out as well, applying huge pressure to our public utilities and our housing and so on. But it's also blinding us or masking what we've actually got, if you like, indigenously in any case. And so there are other problems in maybe education, adult education and so on, that we're not really seeing and we're not aware of. So there's a whole raft of reasons why you're absolutely right, Mark. We want to bring this right down to zero, so that we can have a good look at where we are, sort of, if you like, drain the lake so that we can see what's on the bottom, and before we start sort of bringing back the landscaping. So absolutely correct. But can we do it? Yes, we can. Does it take political will? Yes, it does. Does this government have the political will? No, I don't believe it does, because it's too sort of deferential to vested interests in terms of its support base, its voter base, and so on, even its own members of parliament and councillors and ministers. So it's simply not got the political will to do it. Have Reform got the political will? Yes, they probably have. I believe they have. But do they have the sophistication in terms of policy to deliver on it? No, I don't think they do. Do the Conservatives have the sophistication of policy? Perhaps. Do they have the political will? Perhaps. So we're, at the moment, I wouldn't be putting my money on anybody, except I would not be putting on Keir Starmer.
Henry, you are an MBE, you're ex-military, you're an international... OBE, sorry about that. That's an important distinction. No, and listen, let me tell you, I don't want you going to the tower. Henry Bolton, you are OBE, you're an international border control expert, and you're ex-military. What do you make of Donald Trump's decision to remove the president of Venezuela? Has this made the world a safer place?
I don't think it has, no. For America, yes, probably it has. As he explained, basically this is the Monroe Doctrine on heat, which is basically America is looking after its own backyard, wants to ensure stabilization, and the states around its periphery are not going to cause it any sort of problem. And Venezuela, through the narcotics, has been causing a problem. And historically, back in 2007, President Chavez seized a lot of the oil infrastructure assets of American companies like ExxonMobil. So Trump has got his bee in his bonnet about that, understandably so. But I think it also, if Trump can do it, then China can do it, then Russia can do it, then somebody else can do it down the road. That destabilizes the rest of the globe, but he's not particularly interested in that. I understand why, but it does impact on us. The other thing is that people will throw brickbats at me for saying this, but I think Donald Trump also has a propensity to ignore uncomfortable details, and sometimes to sort of totally mix them up. He's certainly done that with Ukraine and other places. But in this case, you heard him talk yesterday a lot about the oil in Venezuela and compensation for the oil companies that I just talked about, and so on and so forth. He didn't mention democracy once, so it's not about that. Mentioned oil dozens of times. Now, the problem is, I wonder, and I just don't know, Mark, I'm just speculating, whether he understands that Venezuelan oil, whilst Venezuela is sitting on the registered sort of largest reserves of oil, and that on paper is worth a great deal of money, many trillions, about, I think, top estimates, it's 17 trillion, I think. But it's very, very difficult to extract, very, very difficult to process, and after all that, very questionable profitability. And the reason is because it is like bitumen. It is what's called extra heavy and heavy crude. And you can't even put it in a ship to move it without processing it and diluting it first. So I suspect that's not been fully thought through or understood by President Trump. And I think he is going to find himself in a situation where, yes, he can profit from this, but many, many years down the road, after a huge amount, trillions probably, of investment in those oil fields. So I don't think this is going to be, and China and Russia have never before, or not in recent years, in the last sort of 5-10 years, coalesced to really confront the United States on a policy issue in the United Nations. They have done so for the first time. They're going to do that on Monday. And so I suspect what he's doing is he's bringing those two nations even closer together to work against the US interests. So my bottom line on that, Mark, is that for America, great, perhaps, but more complicated than he thinks. And the rest of it, it's going to be the rest of the world is less stable as a result. So, you take your money, you take your choice, or you pay your money, take your choice on that one. What's your perspective? Was it tough? Yes. Do we need to crack down on people who are trafficking narcotics, firearms, exporting terrorism? Bloody right we do. But we've got to think about the consequences 2, 3, 4, 20 steps down the road. And that is strategic statesmanship. And I'm not sure that Trump has got that in this sense.
Henry, a pleasure to see you again. Look forward to many conversations in the course of 2026. Henry Bolton, OBE, International Border Control expert, former leader of UKIP and political broadcaster. Is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? That's next.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is the world a safer place under Donald Trump, who has just removed the president of Venezuela? Nigel says, well, I've got reservations, Mark. Trump is picking on Venezuela, a small country, but always kowtowing to Putin over Ukraine. Are they plotting together? Trump has a free hand in the Americas. Putin gets what he wants in Europe. Then there's China. Maybe we'll see them have a free hand in Asia. The world needs to watch and be cautious. And this from Elliot. Good morning, Mark. Starmer is killing us with net zero. He's also destroying industry and farming. He's allowing people from brutally different cultures to enter our country illegally and roam our streets, some of whom have attacked our women. They had 14 years to look at what the Conservatives did right and did wrong. And when their time came, they still had to lie to get into power and have lied ever since. 2 years in, all I hear is civil war. Imagine how bad you must be as a party to have done that. And from Ben, good morning, Mark. It's obvious Trump does not trust Starmer, which is why he did not tell him about the attack on Venezuela and the arrest of Maduro. Trust is important in any relationship. Starmer has said he's going to make life better for the people, especially on the energy and interest rate cuts. That is just pure, blatant lies, which Starmer does without even thinking. Here's a voice note from Tyler.
Morning, Mark. This Venezuelan guy that Trump took out, one of his crimes, so I see, was manipulated elections. Oh, dear.
There you go. Listen, a very, very nice note of irony struck there by Tyler. A royal exclusive courtesy of the Mail on Sunday and a good friend of this show, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Prince Harry stalker scare means that he's nailed on to be given armed police guards for UK visits, insiders claim. Let's get reaction now from our own Talk Royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Look forward to many conversations in 2026 with you, Rupert. We love having you on the show. What do you make of this story? Do you think it's got legs? Is Harry going to get his armed cops in the UK?
Well, he's working so hard to get it. And obviously this stalker story does give him some credibility as to what he wants to achieve. He always comes here with a degree of security, but he wants the bells and whistles security.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
And that is part of what he's been discussing. And I suppose when he does come here, and he's not coming here very often, okay, he says he's too frightened to bring his children if he doesn't have it. Well, maybe this is some way of just putting that to bed and saying, well, you can come, we'll give you the proper security, but will they come? That might be the interesting dynamic here. Will Meghan and the rest of his family come into the UK? And that is part of the problem, I think, for Harry. It's not just about his issues with his security. It's probably actually persuading the wife to come, because she hasn't shown a great deal of inclination to hot-foot it over here. But she may look at restoring and say, well, this will give my career a degree of credibility. Look, I'm back in the royal fold.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting how it plays out. But I do have a degree of sympathy for Harry. If he has got these kind of issues going on, then he's right to raise them. Then he's right to make sure that perhaps he does have the right sort of security when he comes to this country.
Well, that's right. Viewers of my royal channel on YouTube, The Mark Dolan Show, tend to disagree with me when I say that, yes, Harry's made his own bed, he's got to lie in it, he's left the United Kingdom, he's relinquished his royal duties, but it wasn't his choice to be born the son of the King of the United Kingdom, and come what may, that makes him a target.
That is something that I think we all should take into account, that he is born into the family. Whatever the situation is, he is a target. Yeah. But it is interesting that he does like to go to places like Nigeria. He's been to South America. He does put himself in places that you'd say, well, mate, what's the security like in these particular countries? So, and he always would have come here with a degree of security. He just had to brief, but he, as I say, just didn't have the bells and whistles security. Well, if he does get that, will it put the whole thing to bed? Can we move on? Perhaps, yes, it will be time to move on and worry about his other problems that he's got.
And he's got plenty of those. How much, though, of this battle with the Home Office for security is about Harry's safety, given the fact that he was happy to go to Ukraine, which is famously at war? He's been to China, he's been to South America, he's been to Africa, places like Lesotho and Nigeria. So is there a degree of double standards here from the Prince?
Well, I think there is. And this is where I think people get slightly frustrated with him. That he's constantly moaning at the British government, yet he's showing no hesitation in heading to places, as I say, that might have a little more of a security problem. So I have to say, Harry does operate quite often in the land of double standards. So, and, you know, he will say one thing and then you find out, well, he actually doesn't mean that. So I think there is, and it's an easy stick to say, look, I can't come back to Britain. Well, actually, I'd have to say Britain isn't busting a gut to have him back. So there is an element there. But if he does get the right security, and if it does lead to some form of rapprochement with his father, then maybe finally this aspect of the problems that he's got can be put to rest. He's still got libel court, he's got court cases, and their own issues with the Sussexes at the moment is their career isn't actually going in a very upward curve at the moment. So he may be looking from this point of view to rebuild bridges and try and find a way of engineering what he would like, which is a half-in, half-out scenario. I can't see that happening.
There has to be a long-term concern, Rupert, doesn't there, about the Sussexes' earning power, given the fact that that new Netflix deal is a deal in name only. It's a first-look opportunity for them to pitch ideas to Netflix, which Netflix may or may not commission. And otherwise, you've got Harry, he's got a few speaking engagements, no particular entrepreneurial commitments that I can find in closer examination. Do you think money's going to be a problem for the Sussexes in the years ahead?
Well, if they can't find ways of making the kind of money to support their lifestyle, then yes, it could. Meghan's got grand ideas, but tell me, I don't think as ever her brand has gone off the shelf. And they keep saying it's sold out, but I don't think they've sold much. I think that's a marketing ploy. And I also think that, you know, as you say, the Netflix deal, they say there are things in the pipeline, but will it make them the kind of money to support their lavish lifestyle? I'm not so sure. So that's why, for Harry, because he's got the Invictus Games and various other things, he wants to get back to what he knows, which is basically being a member of the royal family when everything is done for you. But it's not going to happen. He's made his bed, and now he's got to lie in it and suffer the consequences of his decision.
Briefly, Rupert, if you can, does this possible scoop by Charlotte Griffiths in the Mail on Sunday regarding Harry getting his armed cop protection in the UK, does it enhance the chance that the King will meet his grandchildren, Archie and Lily, for the first time since 2022?
Well, you'd hope so. And find a way. Of course, there will be an awful lot of sort of kerfuffle around it and maybe pictures. I hope that if it does happen, we don't see anything from it, and that the Sussexes are told this is not a commercial opportunity for your brand, and do not use the children as a means to say, look how much we're back in the royal foil.
Rupert, brilliant stuff. Happy New Year. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, 8:03. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. And breaking this morning, Donald Trump unseats a sitting president, effectively kidnapping Maduro of Venezuela and his wife as they slept in their guarded compound. A bold and audacious military strike watched by the leader of the free world from his situation room in his Mar-a-Lago estate. But what now for this failed government as the Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of the opposition celebrates the move and as people take to the streets cheering on the collapse of this authoritarian regime? With a peace deal in the Middle East in the bag and an agreement on Ukraine hoped for in the months ahead, is the world now a noticeably safer place under Donald Trump? Has he silenced his critics, or is this once again America becoming the world's policeman? We're going to get reaction from across the political spectrum to this developing story. Also this morning, a leading think tank anticipates Britain's national debt will go from 100% to 270% of GDP. I'm sorry, folks, socialism doesn't work. And that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. Also this morning, could immigration naturally fall to zero? We've got the inside story. And as fresh polling shows Reform holding their commanding lead, will 2026 be a good year for Nigel Farage? What does he need to do this year to reassure you that he is the appropriate person to become Prime Minister of this country? I want you to draw up Nigel Farage's inbox, his to-do list for 2026. What do you want to hear from the man who would be Britain's next Prime Minister? Well, I've had a very heartfelt response to my question about Farage. I want you to draw up his to-do list for 2026. John in Bury says, good morning, Mark. Regarding Reform preparing for government, they'll get in by doing nothing due to the incompetence of Labour digging a grave deeper for themselves on a daily basis. However, to get prepared, they need to recruit the right people, business people, health workers, builders, people who will not buckle under EU policies, and be prepared to stand alone on policies like immigration, deportations, welfare dodgers, have a face-off with France if we have to, and the rest of Europe. Get the Reform government ready to fight for our UK borders and for its citizens. That's John in Bury. Keep those opinions coming. Front page of the Sunday Express. Captured. United States Special Forces take Maduro. Trump says we are going to run Venezuela. Sunday Times, we will run Venezuela is the headline as well. Vows US after capture of Maduro. And The Sun on Sunday, American drug war blitz. Trump captures dictator Maduro, cuffed in pick after US strikes. Donald, we will run Venezuela. Donald Trump last night hailed a stunning US attack on Venezuela, which saw President Nicolas Maduro captured. Blasts ripped through the capital Caracas in a 2 a.m. blitz on a military compound. Tyrant Maduro was accused of narco-terrorism and was reportedly in bed as he was seized with his wife. Donald Trump announced the US will run the oil-rich South American country for the foreseeable future. So is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? Let's get the views of two good friends of mine, Peter Barnes, who is a political strategist and regular talk presenter, doing a great job over Christmas, and the Labour councillor, political broadcaster and dropper of truth bombs, Sebastian Salek. Good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year.
Sebastian, what do you make of this this intervention by the president?
It's remarkable, isn't it? I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it speaks to the core characteristic of Trump, which is his unpredictability. Who thought that we'd be sitting here on the 2nd of January, watching a state be essentially taken over? You could call it a coup if you wanted to. The leader be extracted and seeing trial in the US. It's just remarkable.
It definitely is a coup, I think.
Yeah.
Although, can it be a coup if it's a leader who likely stole the election?
That's a complicated one.
I mean, an easy question on a Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, I think the more interesting focus is the other leader.
He started 10 minutes early. They're struggling.
I'm more interested in Maduro, really. Like a thoroughly unlikable guy, a thoroughly unhelpful president of a country. I think it's good that he's been removed. I'm just dumbstruck by the means. And to tackle your question, is the country or is the world safer under Trump? I don't think it is, because he is so difficult to predict, and in a volatile world you're not necessarily safer.
Aren't these strikes, though, isn't the point that you don't tell people you're going to do them?
Yes, so this is the big point. Everybody's having a go at Keir Starmer not being told. Nobody was told, not even the Israelis. This was hermetically sealed. This was what we saw last night, was the execution of American capability, political will, and you saw a warning shot to China and a very clear behave Iran. That's what that last night was. This has been a long time coming in reality, because there's been a creeping encroachment on Venezuela, the narco-terrorism kind of narrative has been created, I would say, over the last 6 to 7 months by the US. So eventually, I think a lot of us thought this was going to happen. Now, I will agree with you. The dramatic element of it, the shock and awe, makes 2003 look like child's play. I mean, also, the precision of this was extraordinary. Yeah. It seems to me that they're saying that there was no kind of civilian casualties in the extraction and all the rest of it, which I found incredible. But yet again, that's the point. It was about the capability of the American military might, as it were. But I would say I think the world is safer now because of that unpredictability. What Trump likes to do, and we notice this in the first term, is if you don't know what the crazy man with all the weapons is going to do, you don't make a move.
Oh, yeah.
That's the point. Is Trump's kind of chaos is controlled in a way, and it's very, very smart, and it's what a lot of some academics calling it the Trump doctrine, because we're now seeing a move away from the Monroe doctrine, which has kind of dominated since World War II. But it is interesting, the kind of reaction to this, because you see a lot of people kind of pouncing on, obviously, Starmer not being told, but then I also look to the fact that at the same time we had UK and France were also striking in Syria, or on ISIS bases as well. What Trump was also able to do was demonstrate that NATO can actually work. You just don't tell anybody what you're doing, and it's very, very smart, I have to admit. But the big question is, what happens today? So last night was shock and awe. What's coming? What's the plan?
There needs to be a plan.
There needs to be a plan. The thing that went wrong with Afghanistan, the thing that went wrong with Iraq, there was no planning. And that has to change, and it needed to kind of come out, I'd say, in the next 2 to 3 days. If it doesn't, we've got a bigger problem on our hands.
But Trump's not stupid, is he? He's unpredictable. He's a bit of a narcissist. He's got a very slender relationship with the truth. But what he also has, Sebastian Salek, is he's got a degree of common sense. And he said at the press conference yesterday that this very successful strike must not be in vain.
Well, you'd hope that no strike were in vain. What's interesting to me in this situation is how he's somewhat boxed himself in domestically, in that there are many, many Republicans who backed him on the basis that he would not pursue more foreign wars. This is looking awfully to me like the prelude to a foreign war, especially if you're using language like will not be in vain. That's the sort of rhetoric that is used to prolong conflict.
But doesn't he think that actually the deed is done now, and it's just making sure that Venezuela has a democratically elected regime going forward?
Well, that is the big challenge, isn't it? As we've seen with any toppling of a government, you saw it in Iraq. It took a long, long time for a democratically elected government to be installed there, and it's not straightforward. It takes time. It's often, to an extent, violent, because you spur on terrorists and people who want the worst for the West. and people who want revenge. So, yes, it sounds simple in principle, but this is part of a long, long process, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right there, but what I will disagree with you on is the domestic aspect. This will play incredibly well to an increasing Latino American vote that the Republicans have been sucking up for the last 6 to 7 years. We're now in midterms year. I think he's just reassured a lot of Venezuelan, Cuban, and a lot of Latin American people who have left those kind of countries to America because of the danger. Don't forget, 8 million people left Venezuela because of this situation. And that is a huge voter base, potentially, that is going to be attracted to Trump because they want their own country back, and Trump is helping them do that. It's going to be a difficult narrative to play. I think you're right with the Republican kind of split. I mean, it's very clear. MAGA is already more fractured than anything else. But if played right and done smartly, this could play well. He's going to lose a lot of support in terms of you said no more foreign intervention, but it will be, does he gain more than he loses? We're just going to have to wait.
And also, it's interesting, ABC News, who are no friend of the Trump administration, have reported that Republicans largely back Donald Trump on this particular Venezuela action. What helps, of course, is that it's been mercifully a bloodless coup, and therefore perhaps the parallels with the Iraq War end there. But do you think, Sebastian, with this move that this is a guy that stands accused of narco-terrorism, he's clearly destroyed his own country, it's likely that he shouldn't even be president given the outcome of the last election, which he appears to have stolen. There's strong evidence to back that up. The leader of the opposition has celebrated this move. Is it time now for the left to reconsider the image of Donald Trump and understand that he's actually a force for good in this world?
He's certainly part of the Western Axis, and he's certainly part of one of the most powerful countries on earth. So whatever you think of his politics, there is a team to be formed between the US and Western European nations. That is undoubtedly true. And
does this tell me that the left potentially could be quite warm to Trump's foreign policy, if not his domestic policies?
I think you have to put your politics behind you sometimes, and you have to pursue pragmatism, and that's what I think we've seen Starmer doing. They're not political bedfellows, naturally, are they? But they have worked very well together. They have achieved breakthroughs that I don't think we would have expected from a Labour Prime Minister and a Republican President. But what we also have to do is be ready to stand up to the President when he encroaches upon certain areas. I think there was a lot of very worrying language around Russia last year, and I was pleased to see European leaders come together against that. Because we can't all end up in a situation where we are in hock to the US. We have to maintain our independence.
And
without
I'm afraid. Our foreign policy has been linked to the United States for the last 30, 40 years.
Of course it's been. Of course
we already are in hock.
Of course it has. That's
this
GCSE
idea
politics,
that any nation is independent of the United States is absolute nonsense. Also, one thing, when it comes to the issue of the left, they're never going to accept this because, don't forget, we had a leader of the Labour Party not too long ago that wanted us to have closer relations with Venezuela. You know, there is a real problem, you know, when the left, when it comes to a lot of these dictators, they say they're very for the people, unless, you know, you actually have to do something about them. Trump has rather irritatingly, I think, for at least the people of Starmer, kind of put this issue back on the map for him because, you know, nobody really wants to have this record of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party back on the headlines, which it will do.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn was thrown out of the Labour Party for a very good reason.
Doesn't
it was
matter.
News like this.
Keir Starmer backed him. That man, Jeremy Corbyn, wanted closer relationships and said all these things about Hugo Chavez. That connection doesn't make you could kick him out of the party. The Prime Minister backed that guy. That's about the man's integrity, that's about his principles and his character. That isn't a character, that's a way to take him down easily.
We have a shadow cabinet that backed Liz Truss. We have a reform cabinet who stood together with Nathan Gill, a man who's gone to prison for taking bribes from the Russians.
To be fair, don't make me defend reform. Go
on, give it a go.
No, because they're not the ones in government, they're not... They're completely
my
different
point
situations.
is that there are bad eggs in every party, and the question is how do you deal with them? You boot them out. You don't stand by them, which is what Reform have done.
Well, the Labour Party have, basically.
They booted out Jeremy Corbyn. He's not a member of the Labour Party.
Yes, but let's be real.
They took the appropriate action.
Oh, the appropriate action of the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn.
From a leader who campaigned for Corbyn to be Prime Minister, a man who said that he wouldn't press the nuclear button or refused to say he would press the nuclear button if we were attacked.
Yes, and he's since been savagely removed from the party, which was the right thing to do.
If Starmer was a good man, why didn't he leave the shadow cabinet like so many other good Labour MPs did when Corbyn was leader?
Well, because if everybody had done that, and if everybody had left the party, there wouldn't be a Labour Party left. What you do is you stay and you change and you fix and you get into government, which is what he's done.
So you compromise on your principles and your character just to get into power, which is basically what you just said.
To do positive good.
Positive
good. To make positive change, which is what we're seeing. So it all pans out, Peter. It's all worked out well in the end.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that rather disagree with you.
Well, it's 8:17 on Talk Breakfast. Delighted to have Peter and Sebastian in the studio. And positive good is an interesting theme for the next discussion, because it's been revealed that new council houses are to be built for asylum seekers in an effort to end the use of hotels. But is that a positive good, to build new council houses for people seeking asylum in this country? We'll debate that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sophie Church, the political reporter at the Daily Mail newspaper, has revealed that asylum seekers will be housed in newly built council houses as part of a push to end the use of asylum hotels and private landlords. Around 200 local authorities have indicated interest in the government pilot scheme that would fund the building of new properties or the refurbishment of derelict housing to make room for asylum seekers. 5 councils, Brighton and Hove, Hackney, Peterborough, Thanet and Powys, have confirmed they're keen to take part in the scheme. How's this going to go down with my viewers and listeners, do you think, Peter Barnes?
I think this is going to go down like a cup of hot sick, if I'm being brutally honest, because, yes, again, this is looking like the people who have come here illegally seem to get everything. Everybody in this country seem to get nothing. That narrative, at this time, to do it makes no sense, because you've just created the perfect wedge issue as we go into local elections. This is just terrible politics, and it's just terrible policy. I mean,
why is it terrible policy?
Because fundamentally, why haven't, if we've got, where have you magicked the £100 million from to this extra funding into this scheme? Where's that come from? It all just seems to have been announced on the huff, because they seem to have to do something, because yet again this is the Labour Party being incapable of having the political courage to dismantle the ECHR, dismantle the refugee
convention. You're not concerned about the billions we're paying to private companies to house asylum seekers?
Loads, but we can't do, I don't want to, the easiest way to do that is to leave the ECHR,
Would you like to
dismantle
reduce
all
that
of that.
number that we're spending on asylum hotels?
Yes, massively, to zero.
So this policy will do that. This
No,
will reduce
it won't reduce
the amount
it.
of spending we're giving to private companies.
Yes.
Why
Okay.
won't it?
Because, yes, again, this is the same thing that we hear time and time again, that unfortunately that's not how this will work, because you'll then find that these companies will have investments in the building firms and all the rest of it. These companies aren't just a one single block. That's the point.
But if you use public money to buy houses that you put asylum seekers in, you don't then have to house those asylum seekers in housing that is paid for by it's owned by private companies.
Yes, I understand
you
the
are
logic of
saving
that.
money.
Yes, but
Well, so that's a good policy, then.
do we really think it's going to be a stop at 100 million? Do we really think it's going to be delivered on time? Do we really think anything is going to be actually
that's
deliverable?
speculation. We can't see the future.
speculation.
But what I'm
I
asking you,
have
Peter,
years of this to
is it a good policy? And I think it is, and you seem to have accepted it is as
No,
well, because it's
not
going to
really,
save taxpayer money.
Because
what I
on the
care
fundamental
about, and
basis,
what I hope you
do you know
care
what
about
I
as
actually
well.
care about? Giving the people of this country the £100 million to build council houses so they can live in
And
them.
they will, because as you know,
But this is specifically for refurbished homes for asylum seekers.
have a look
so
at the policy.
how is that
Yeah.
for the local people?
Because, as you know, these are being leased to local councils for 10 years, then they are going to be...
Oh, so the people in this country have to get to the back of the queue. Is that what the Labour Party are now arguing?
If you allow me to, and I'm sorry that I'm explaining the policy to you, this feels awkward, but you know they're going to be used for asylum seekers for 10 years, then they're going to be used by councils for whatever they want.
So yet again, the Labour Party's position is Brits to the back of the queue, asylum seekers to the front of the queue.
No, it's save taxpayer money and then create council houses that
So why not
last
put
forever.
Brits to the front of the queue?
Brits are at the front.
But you just said asylum seekers at the front of the queue.
What
Because
queue are we talking about?
Who gets a council
I'll give you the
house?
queue. The queue of 1.3 million people who are currently sitting on a housing waiting list.
Yes.
1.3 million people. So I think the 1.4 should be the asylum seekers. And the first 1.3
But
would
you've
go
talked
to
about
Brits.
a queue. Which queue are you talking about?
That queue. The list of people that need a council house that is being ignored, put to the back of the queue for people that are coming to this
list has
country.
gone up
Oh my God.
3% under Labour, by the way. People waiting for social housing.
Look, I think I'm the only councillor in the room. I really hate to explain all this, but this is not one queue. There is a queue that if you come and you need council housing, you are banded, and that is done on a needs assessment. So it doesn't matter where you're from.
Yeah.
The most important thing is how badly are you in need.
There's a lot of
if you
people
are
in
terribly
need at a lot of different
disabled,
levels.
terribly
No one's
ill,
denying
you've got
that.
a lot of children, you're not making enough money, you're going to be banded quite highly.
Who came to this country illegally at the front, and
Peter, I'm
everybody
trying
else
to
goes
explain the
back.
facts to you,
But
and you're
that's the
desperate
point.
to spit out
No,
rhetoric.
I'm not
I know
spitting
this will
out
go down
rhetoric.
well with viewers and listeners.
No, I don't really
Talking
care
about
about
the
that,
queue.
as everybody
they're,
knows.
They're going to love to hear
One at a
this.
time, one at a time.
This is the fundamental nature of this policy, is that some people get to jump the queue.
What's really frustrating is here you come not equipped with the facts, and you're reaching for rhetoric because it's
I'm not
easy, because it
reaching.
goes down well with your...
Says the one. I'm sorry, talking about taxpayer money.
You've accepted that this will save taxpayers money. So you
in the
conceded
very
on that
long run,
point.
on a
No,
speculation,
in the short term.
by the way, to
in the
use your
short
word,
term.
in the speculation,
Because
you
oh
just
my God,
by your
do I
own
have
argument.
to repeat this?
Yes.
I'm going to throw Sebastian a bone. I'm going to throw you a
Go
bone
on.
New Year's.
Go on, thank
New Year's
you.
resolution, which is that this is a problem that Labour have inherited from the Conservatives. Okay, these asylum seekers, this is not exclusive to the last 18 months. So you've got people that are here seeking asylum, enter the country legally or illegally, that say that I've got to stay because of terror and all the rest of it. So these people are here. Right, it's not exclusively a problem of Labour's making. They have to live somewhere. We don't want them in hotels, and we also don't want them expensively accommodated in private housing, because again, it's bad for the taxpayer. So Sebastian is right to make that point, and I think we need to be intelligent how we house asylum seekers. The wider issue, Sebastian, which I think will prey on the minds of my viewers and listeners, is it's no problem to swallow this policy now if we are cutting supply. But the issue you've got is that the policies of this government are seeing further illegal boat crossings, 70,000 since Keir Starmer was elected. So this is an ongoing scandal, an ongoing national crisis. If you could say to the public, don't worry, we're stopping the boats, and then we will basically recalibrate and catch up with those who need housing now, and then in 10 years' time, I'm delighted to say there will be no social housing for illegal immigrants because they won't be here.
The point is, this is a problem that nobody has ever fixed before. It's so hard. It's why we talk about it all the time. And I think you have to be, again, pragmatic.
But
it's
no focus on supply.
Yeah.
Supply in terms of the
ongoing issue.
Of course, there's focus on supply, which is why we have a deal with France, with Germany, with Greece, working with European neighbours.
How's it working out?
Because this is a pan-European problem.
You've got the facts apparently. So what are the facts on those deals with France and how it's affecting illegal immigration and smashing the gangs? How's that going?
Well, we had and I hesitate to weaponise this argument, but we had the political correspondent of GB News, dare I mention that name in this building.
I'm familiar with that network.
Predicting that the France deal would work and would reduce immigration and the issue would go away. And I sincerely hope he's right.
They've got a few nutters over at GB News. I would take what they say with a pinch of salt since I'm not there anymore. But look, so I want to acknowledge that this is a crisis that Labour have inherited.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, they also, can I just say...
And I don't think it's easy to be Prime Minister, and I don't think it's easy to be the government. But this pill would be easier to swallow, I think, for my audience. If you could say, listen, we've got asylum seekers, they've got to live somewhere, not the hotels, not the private, you build a council flat, and then they live there, and in 10 years, you say it's in the public property, public good, a public resource, that's fine. But what this will... is completely backfired, because if people feel like the boat crossings will continue ad infinitum, well, then you're going to keep building council property for these people, and it's going to enrage the public.
Well, the point is at the moment is that people are more angry about them being in hotels, and I think this is an effort to get people out of
here in
hotels.
The first place, no matter where you house them, they don't want them in the country. I think that's the anger. This is what the Labour Party have really got wrong. They think if you just keep moving them around, then the anger will go away. People want them out of the country, and that supply stopped. That's how you fix the problem. All you're doing is shuffling pieces around the board. You're not aiming to win the game.
Well, let's take another angle to this, which is right to buy. And I would argue this is a huge part of the problem, that council houses were essentially sold off en masse. And if you are supportive of building more housing and having enough for people who need it and cutting that list, the housing waiting list that I deal with in my job every day, and sadly can't help everybody who wants to be helped, and that's a great source of sorrow, you would, in no uncertain terms, denounce right to buy as an awful policy that shrunk the housing stock permanently.
Oh, I don't disagree, because we don't build anything in this country. I've always said this is half the problem. But as you want to be a pragmatist,
we didn't need to build social houses in the 80s and the 90s. Even under Tony Blair, there wasn't actually an issue of capacity when it came to social housing until really the last 15 years. So, that's why Thatcher didn't build new council houses. We didn't need them, and we didn't under Blair. So things have changed. But, I mean, would you acknowledge, Sebastian, the public anger at the idea, the principle, the optics of a council property being built and then accommodating asylum seekers?
We're focusing on building the properties, though. This policy isn't necessarily about building. It's about buying, and it's about refurbishing derelict properties as well. And I think that's a really sensible thing to do.
And then putting asylum seekers in there rather than Brits, 1.3 million of whom are waiting
Well, yes, because if people are angry about hotels and you can take them out and put them into a derelict property, that's a good thing. And then if 10 years' time that reverts to the council and they can use that for anybody who needs it, then overall everybody is
has to put up and shut up then for 10 years. Is that the argument?
So. Did I say that?
No, well, essentially you did.
No,
because you said
you
say that they've got to wait because you've got to wait 10 years for this 1.3 million people that are waiting right now that apparently aren't as important as the asylum seekers.
You're assuming that nobody's building council houses.
Clearly not at the rate that we need.
They are.
Not at the rate that we need.
Of course not at the rate that we need.
So these ones that we're building specifically for a group of people that aren't people that are taxpayers and need help. We're giving it to people who came here illegally. That's what we're doing.
And your solution is let's boot them all out.
Well, I would like to.
What kind of a Briton are you? What kind of a Briton are you when you say nobody must come to our country and seek our help?
Well, I didn't say that
from
either,
war-torn countries?
I didn't.
Because you said...
No, I didn't.
Well, do you want any asylum... Well, let's focus on this. Do you want any asylum seekers in this country?
If you come with a legitimate cause, yes. My problem is I don't agree with most of the legitimate causes.
Peter, do you understand how the asylum system works?
Yes, please continue to insult my intelligence.
Well, no, because you've just betrayed a complete misunderstanding of the asylum system. People come and we test them. We decide.
But
you can't. That is literally what the asylum system is.
This is the point. Is I've just said
that's
I don't
such
agree.
a basic tenet.
Yes, because if you actually
Peter, if you're going to come on here and debate, have the facts at hand, please.
Again, if you actually listen to what I said I don't agree with the claims that are being made.
So only
honest
brokers should turn up.
As I've sat in that chair and in that one and said multiple times.
Okay, so what's your dream asylum system? What would it look like?
It needs to be significantly more robust than what we've got now, and it needs to be making sure that we can verify claims. We know who people are and all this kind of thing. The problem is now we just seem to have rubber stamp everybody. We have one of the highest percentage rated of asylum approvals.
Yes, the
which
French,
is absolutely
the French
absurd.
approve dramatically fewer asylum claims than we do.
They take many more than we do.
One easy win would be that if you've entered the country illegally, you'll never receive asylum in this country, particularly if you're fleeing terror from a country called France.
What's your question, sorry?
I don't think that anybody that has left France, got on a dinghy and come to the UK should ever be granted asylum.
But so fewer
because
people,
they're in a
so many
safe
fewer
country.
people come here than come to France, then come to Germany.
Sure. But
why
if
should we be the exception? Why should we have a lower duty than our European neighbours?
I think the principle of fleeing a safe country, which is France, entering a dinghy, which is a humanitarian disaster because people are dying in the Channel, and then coming to the country, breaching our border, they should never be rewarded with asylum in this country.
But this is the problem, that
very
language
different
around
if they've
breaching
come
our
from
border.
Eritrea,
I take
or
a
if they've come
lot
from
of concern
Afghanistan.
with that.
I understand it's more complex. But if you come from France and you enter this country, you breach the border of this country, then there's no justification for asylum.
Well, I think what you're doing when you are leaving a war-torn country is your next decision is, where do I want to invest the rest of my life? Where do I want to contribute?
You think if you're fleeing a
That's
war-torn
not your
country,
choice.
You'd
Well, it
take
can
the first
be.
bit of refuge you could find. Surely,
Well, no, I think
what
if
you
you're
do is
going
you don't shop around for the best deal.
If you're going to set up the rest of your life somewhere, you want to make sure it's somewhere where you might
Well, that
speak the
seems to be the
language, you
bigger
might be able
problem,
to
is that
integrate properly. We know we want
we get
people to
into the problem.
integrate,
Why
don't we?
can't
It's
you
important.
integrate in France? What's
Well,
wrong with France?
Well, if you're fluent in English and you don't speak a word of French, you should probably go to an English-speaking country.
What about I mean, how many of the people that cross the Channel in dinghies are fluent in English?
Sorry?
How many people that cross the Channel illegally on dinghies are fluent in English?
I don't have a figure for you, but what I can say anecdotally is that when
Is
I
that
go...
all you need now? You can speak. You've done Duolingo, so you're in.
No, of course not. Of course not. But people have the legal right to claim asylum in any country they wish. And they are simply exercising that right.
And I agree with you. And if legitimately they come from France to the UK to seek asylum, that's not a problem. But what's happening is they're coming across the Channel in dinghies. They're often throwing documentation into the sea. They're being told by human rights lawyers what to say when they get here. And it's a mockery of the system.
Are you criticising their right to legal advice?
Well, I'm criticising the motivations of human rights lawyers who are part of this illegal immigration industry.
But do you not think that they have the right to legal advice?
Well, I think yes, they most certainly do. And the legal advice that they would be receiving if I was in charge, we can only dream, is I'm afraid to tell you that you've entered the country illegally from a safe country of France, so my legal advice is you will not receive asylum and you'll be deported.
But they're purely doing what they're entitled to do. They're entitled to claim asylum where they want, and they're entitled to a lawyer.
Exactly, and I would change that entitlement. And I would change that entitlement. And I believe in it. That the people that should get asylum are the ones who have a legitimate reason, such as the Ukrainians.
Yes.
Okay, and they did not cross the Channel in
And we built
dinghies.
houses for them and for the Afghans as well, but I didn't see
and I think
that.
and here's the point, I think the public are comfortable with that. I don't think that most of the public are too concerned about the Ukrainians and the Hong Kongers. Because they understand what's happened in Hong Kong, which is now under China rule. They understand what happened in Ukraine. It was a country that was invaded.
Well, that isn't our duty to educate people on what's happening in Eritrea, as
But
you
I
say,
don't know why
and
you're taking
Sudan
a bullet
and
for
Afghanistan.
I don't know why you're taking a bullet for the folk that come across the Channel from a safe country in France in boats, many of whom are economic migrants.
Well, if they are, then they'll have their asylum denied and they'll be sent away, won't they?
And that's the thing. And Peter, they don't, because the majority are granted asylum. Partly because human rights lawyers tell them how to game the system and how to play a game.
Peter, you sound very confident on this. Could you please...
Including becoming Christians. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's a fun
I'm
one.
amazed how many people from
Russell Brand, Tommy Robinson.
I'm amazed by how many people have become Christians once they cross the Channel
I would also
in a dinghy.
remember the Illegal Migration Act that was passed just before the last general election has I think it's Article 3, that if you come into the country illegally, you don't get to claim asylum. That was not activated by the Labour government. Why?
Did you see what happened? Did you see what happened to the backlog? It shot up because they essentially tied their own hands legally. A big part of the reason we're in this position now is because the Tories passed that law.
No, not really, because if you get put on a dinghy, go back. You hit the British shores. I don't understand why you aren't put on a bus, straight to the airport, off you go.
Well, there's a little step in the middle,
you've
which is
just
called
decided
claiming
that
asylum.
You get to jump the queue.
Which every no, you. What
That's
is this
what it
queue?
is.
What is this queue?
It's called prioritising people.
What's the name of this queue that you've come up with today?
Oh, come on, let's be real, Sebastian. You've already admitted that you prioritise people. That is the definition of a queue, where you put people
There are
in
multiple
categories.
queues in this world, and you're talking about the queue as if it's this all-seeing,
It's a general term in which what we have to understand is who is getting the preferential treatment by the
why
system
are you
and
so
by the
okay?
state.
Answer me this: why are you so determined to pit people against each other?
I'm not.
Well, you are.
Not really.
Isn't the government doing that? You're talking about the Brits versus the asylum seekers. Why are you doing that?
Because unfortunately, the Labour Party have made it that way. The Labour Party have made it that way. It's been the left's interest. The left in general and the Labour Party.
Why the left?
Why do you not understand this?
I fundamentally don't. I'm completely
Explain to me
baffled
why you
with
don't understand that.
Because well, explain to me what your point is.
There we go.
Well, listen, what we're going to do, this is a fantastic debate, and I really value Sebastian's.
I know it's early.
I really value Sebastian's views, and I really value Peter's, and that's what this show and this channel's all about. So we're going to keep this conversation going, and I think Roger in Liverpool's not happy, and he's going to contribute to this. What do we think about this? Have we got to simply deal with the hotels issue by allowing asylum seekers to live in repurposed accommodation, or is it jumping the queue? Is there a queue? We'll debate all of that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, what about this? The government are planning to use a repurposed housing stock to accommodate asylum seekers. Is it jumping the queue? What is a queue? Let's get the views of Roger in Liverpool. Top of the morning, Roger.
Morning, Mark. Morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Very good. What do you make about this heated debate that's happened now, played out between Peter Barnes and Sebastian Salek? What do you think, Rog?
I got a habit of always going back to the foundation of an issue. All right. First of all, yes, we want to build all these houses for migrants or refurbish them, but we've got to stop what's coming into the country in the first place. Otherwise, you're going to have a constant pipeline that's full of people, and you have to constantly build or revamp homes. That's number one. Number two, if you don't stop them, okay, you're never going to get on top of the problem. Number three, you end up now having contracts with builders saying, okay, you're going to build, let's see, contractor Joe, you're going to get a contract for £100 million and you've got to build 100 homes, just for example, or 1,000 homes, okay? And there's no limitation as to when he's supposed to be finished, so then it goes to cost overrun. So the 100 million becomes 150 million, then it's 200 million. And it's just a never-ending loop. It's like everyone thinks that there's this big black hole full of pound notes that everyone can just extract from. There's no proper procurement, no thinking through of it. It's just a matter of coming onto Twitter or coming onto a press conference, and I'm talking now about the politicians. They say something that they think they're going to pacify the public with, right? But there's no actual plans. The ODR don't know the arse from the elbow, sorry to say it. Okay, and the politicians are just blowing smoke up our backsides.
Roger in Liverpool, stay with us. Your reaction, Sebastian?
Look, I still think this makes good financial sense. I would, Roger, respectfully push back on your point around not letting people in. And it goes back to the right to claim asylum. And yes, sometimes that's uncomfortable. Yes, often that is very expensive. But if we want to be a credible player in this world, which to me is very important, I care about how Britain is seen on the global stage. And I want us to be a country that is giving people a chance.
Do you
Not
care,
everybody
Peter Barnes,
gets
do you
that,
care how Britain is seen on the international
sorry.
stage? Because I don't.
Yes.
I care how Britain is seen by the people of this country.
Yes, the reality is Britain is seen as a doormat. That's what it is. You know, you just rock up here, you get put up in a hotel, and now you get given a house. It's wonderful, isn't it? You know, what is the point? You want to talk about credibility on the world stage. Controlling your borders is the most basic thing you can do, and this country has not done it, and I will agree
Peter,
with you for a very long time.
I'm going to ask Roger this question in a second. Roger, get your answer ready. Peter, do you think that if you've entered the country illegally from a safe country like France, that you should not receive asylum?
You shouldn't get it.
Really? What do you think? What do you think about that, Roger? Because it would cause uproar and it would be in breach of international law if you couldn't claim asylum having entered the country on a dinghy. What do you think, Rog?
I don't think they should be allowed into the country. You know where they should be applying for it? The nearest embassy from the country that they're originating from. So if they ended up in, if there's, say Afghanistan, there's no British embassy. Okay, how did you get into Germany? Right, go to the British embassy in Germany and do your application there. Okay, so they remain in the country that they first arrived in, be it Germany, France, Italy, whatever, before they get it. And they have to have that document to get them into this country. They have to be cleared at the first port of entry, for want of a word, which would be a British embassy in the country closest to them. Tidy it up. Because the minute they get onto our shores, okay, I'm sorry, it's all smoke and mirrors. We do not get rid of the people.
Roger, thank you very much for your call. What about that? Going back to Roger's point about supply, a point I made earlier, that the public could accept this if they saw numbers coming down.
Look, I hope numbers will come down. I hope not, but it is so contingent on so many things, isn't it? And I think one of the biggest factors is what's going on in the world. What are the conflicts playing out and how are they affecting us? And it ties back to the conversation we were having earlier with Trump and our question around, is the world now safer? Sadly, there are enough conflicts that are generating people who are being displaced. And look, my heart goes out to them. If you are forced to leave your home and if you're forced to leave your country, you've not had a very lucky lot in life. And I hope that if that, God forbid, ever happens to us, then other countries would show us the same generosity.
OK, what about this voice note from Vivian? Thank you, David. Take it away.
Hey, Mark, it's Vivian from Oxfordshire. Just been listening about the idea of building new council houses for migrants, which is actually a pretty stupid idea. The migrants are never going to end. They keep coming on a regular basis, more and more arriving. Most of them, a majority are filled with Somalians, of all people. What do they bring in? Absolutely nothing. And more coming every day. You can keep building forever at this rate. Absolutely stupid. No, stop the pull factor, stop the benefits, stop the housing. Tell them no more. Tell France to go and sling its hook. There's not going to be any more fishing until they sort this out, and no more money. Got to play hardball with these people now. Been a soft touch for long enough. Can't wait for him to go and Nigel in. Thanks, Mark. Great show as always. Bye.
Vivian, thank you for your voice note. Judy has a voice note for us as well.
Good morning, it's Judy from Altos, West Yorkshire. Building council houses for illegal immigrants is just absolutely ridiculous. I can remember years ago, you used to be able to put your name down for a council house and then you could nip into council and they'd tell you how far up the list you were. You know, are you 6 down? And then, you know, because I can remember my late sister-in-law, we used to go regular when she would after a council house, see how far up the list she was. But this is just giving them to people that have no right to be in this country. Absolutely ridiculous. They should be detained and deported. Never mind giving them anything. Thank you.
There you go. I mean, look, you know, Vivian and Judy are not happy about this. What is the path forward, Sebastian, to resolve this issue?
To resolve the entire asylum crisis.
So we don't have to have this conversation in 10 years' time?
Yeah, look, fantastic question. I think a big part of it is accepting that this is going to be a piecemeal solution. There is not going to be a single silver bullet that will solve this problem. And that's what winds me up a bit when people get downbeat about the France deal, for example. Of course, that deal on its own isn't going to solve the migrant crisis, but it's part of it, and it takes time, and you have to build it up. And I'd like to see those kinds of discussions continue. I'd like to see more deals with other countries, because this is an issue that originates elsewhere, whether that's in Africa or Asia via Europe. We have to be cutting this off at the source. So yes, the visual element to us is the boats. It's a very vivid image, isn't it? And it's what we all bear in mind as we talk about this. But it's a problem that starts much, much further away, and we have to acknowledge that as well.
Emmanuel Macron is not a raging right-winger, pretty centre ground in French politics, and he said just a couple of years ago, we cannot accept the misery of the world. Was he right to say that?
I don't know what the context was for the...
What he meant is that there's probably 2 or 3 billion people that would have a better life in France, Britain, or anywhere else in the Western world, and that it's not practical to think that you could accommodate them.
Well, if what he's saying is that we can't take the majority of people, then he's completely right. And
well,
in
I
fact,
thought we
that's
had a duty to, according to you.
No,
so at what point does our duty end?
OK, so I'm going to finish my sentence now, and I'm going to say that the majority of people don't come to Britain or France or Germany. The majority of people stay in the Middle East and stay in Africa, and they seek asylum nearby.
That's perfectly fine, and I understand that. However, again, where does our duty end? Because you said we had a duty to do this. Where does our duty end? That's what people in this country want the answer to.
We have a duty
because we have
to
seemed to have rolled
claims.
out. Yes, we seem to have rolled out all this stuff. Now they're getting housing, hotels, benefits, legal advice, all the rest of it. When do we say no? When have we done our bit?
Well, we often say no. We often tell people...
we don't compared to most other countries.
Well, we
keep saying yes.
We
That's half the problem.
Well, our rate of enforced deportations have gone up over the last year.
Well,
so
why do
more
people
are being sent away against their will.
It was a little bit lower.
Because we're saying to them, I'm sorry, you do not meet the threshold for asylum. We're going to have to move you on.
That number is nowhere near
You mentioned 10 years. You held the carrot on the stick of 10 years, and then this housing will be released for the 1.3 million people waiting for social housing who are actually British people. Derek's not sure about that. He said, where are these migrants going to go in 10 years' time? A hotel?
I don't know. It's hard to look forward 10 years, isn't it?
But you said that the property will be released in about a decade's time.
Oh, yeah, I didn't make up the policy. I'm just reading off a bit of paper like the rest of us.
Yes. But I was accused of speculation that you're using something yet again as a firm directive.
Well, no, because you were talking about what you thought would happen in the future. I'm just reading off a bit of paper, which, incidentally, you haven't read because you seem quite surprised by the 10 years.
I have read it, but again, continue to insult my intelligence.
Well, Peter, why did it come as such a surprise to you that this reverted to...
It didn't.
Well, it did.
It didn't.
OK, well, we'll play that clip back later because...
I will.
Nicola says, Nicola in Norfolk, Britain is currently seen as a soft-touch laughingstock on the world stage. If Sebastian is so keen for the illegals to be looked after by us, then he and his type who argue for them can put them up on their sofa if they haven't got a spare room. Peter says, morning, Mark. Funny how it's only young men who are fleeing for their lives, so-called war-torn countries, Peter in Suffolk. And this from Trevor, who says... what about this? The reason these people are getting so many... the reason we're getting so many people here isn't because of world events. It's because they get everything once they are here. They get housing, they get food, they get money, they get healthcare, they get everything.
I just come back to this idea of why are we pitting people against each other? Why is it the people versus the migrants? Why do we have to create this conflict? Why can't we just say...
Because there's a finite amount of resources.
Well, no, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. That is the mindset that so many people have, and it is so infuriating. And I'm sorry, this is not a personal thing. But it is not, because we can grow the pie. We can grow.
How's that growing? I mean, how's that going? We've got 1% growth annually at the moment.
But that's exactly what this is about. This is about a growth mindset and understanding that there is enough to go around if you create that growth.
Yes.
All right.
Well, listen,
the size of the pie is not fixed.
I've got bad news for you. You guys are brilliant together. Which means...
sorry, I've been quite rude to you today.
No, have a little.
It's like the double act that secretly they pretend not to get on, but they love each other deep down. Listen, brilliant debate. Please come back soon, lads. Sebastian Salek, Peter Barnes. Next up, is the world a safer place under Donald Trump? I've got Britain's best historian. You won't want to miss it. The man's a genius. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Front page of The Sun on Sunday, American drug war blitz. Donald Trump captures dictator Maduro. Donald Trump last night hailed a stunning US attack on Venezuela, which saw President Nicolas Maduro captured. Blasts ripped through the capital, Caracas, in a 2 a.m. blitz on a military compound. Tyrant Maduro, accused of narco-terrorism, was reportedly in bed with his wife when seized by the US authorities. Let's get reaction now from one of the country's leading historians, and there is some evidence to suggest the most published historian in the country, Martin Whittock. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning. What a morning. Never a dull moment, and it's only, 4 days into 2026?
Most definitely. What has motivated America's actions in Venezuela?
Good question. Right. Maduro and his corrupt regime are very, very bad, to put it mildly. But of course, there are many corrupt people and bad regimes in the world, but the US don't intervene with all of them. So the question arises, why this particular case? And I would suggest some particular things stand out. Firstly, it's in the US hemisphere of interest. Right back to the 1820s, Monroe Doctrine, and a big tradition of American intervention in what they regard as the near abroad or their own backyard. And that's why he cares about Venezuela, but not so much about Ukraine. It's been presented as an anti-drugs action, although interestingly, Venezuela doesn't produce significant quantities of cocaine or any fentanyl, the main driver of US deaths from drugs. It mostly serves as a transit point for cocaine traffic from Colombia, and much of it destined for Europe, West Africa, Caribbean, not to the US market. Only a small percent of cocaine ultimately moving towards the US travels via Venezuela. Most goes via Mexico. Serious problems, but the anti-drug policy doesn't really apply as it might seem to. It's anti-left. That plays well with many within the Trump coalition, but many within the MAGA movement are not happy with foreign intervention. So it's a high-risk strategy politically. Personal animosity. Trump dislikes Maduro, and things get personal. Immigration, maybe Venezuelans will stay put or return home if Maduro is gone, but more will be on the move if there's chaos. And oil. Venezuelan crude is harder than most to refine, but Trump has already voiced the dollar opportunities this may bring to the US. So basically, it's a bit more than a crusade on behalf of democracy, I think, but that's in no way being sympathetic to the terrible Maduro regime. It's complicated, but he might find change, that's Trump might find regime change, is easier than regime replacement. Remember Afghanistan? Remember Iraq.
Most definitely. Is this move bad for China, bad for Russia, and bad for Iran?
Well, very interesting. I think in some ways, yes and no. Yes, in as much as it shows the interventionist nature of the US regime, the US government under President Trump, but no, in as much as I think he behaves very, very differently in what he regards as his hemisphere than theirs. And I think China will be looking at Taiwan thinking, well, two can play at the intervention game, although recently the Americans have been arming the Taiwanese again. Putin will be encouraged to think, well, if you can intervene in Venezuela, I can intervene, in inverted commas, in Ukraine. So I think they will be watching this with concern, thinking, well, how does this man act? But I think they'll also be taking some encouragement from this, which is why many in the diplomatic community are concerned, because what they're basically saying is, if we're going to have any kind of rules-based order, rather than gunboat, or some might add helicopter gunship diplomacy and great power immunity from scrutiny, surely we have to handle things differently to this. And that doesn't in any way imply sympathy for the appalling Maduro regime. It's just when you act like this, you can open up a can of worms.
Most definitely. Given the fact that Europe wasn't consulted about this action, what does it tell us about the balance of power in the world at the moment?
Well, it tells us something about, A, the semi-detached nature of the USA to Europe, and that goes back right to the beginning of the Trump presidency, and we're getting hints of that in the previous Trump presidency. So in some ways, that isn't surprising. It also shows the kind of unilateral behaviour of the USA now, and it does go to show that we now live in what you might call a multipolar world. You know, Russia, perhaps Iran as well, although that's more complicated again, I know, China and the US. And in some areas, the US is prepared to act, like with Iran, for example, or Venezuela. And in other areas, it seems to be increasingly showing an attitude that says, that's your near abroad, that's your backyard, you can do what you want there. So in some ways, the Americans are acting as a world policeman in Venezuela, but it really is only a world policeman, as they would view it, on their block or their quarter of the city, if you see what I mean. Elsewhere, there's very little interest from the USA. So that makes for a much less stable and more predictable world. And as I say, none of this is sympathy towards the appalling Maduro regime. It's just that things like this have a habit of getting out of control and having unforeseen consequences.
Well, it's interesting that you've said that, isn't it? Now, of course, somebody that was very close to Donald Trump in his first term is John Bolton, who has cautiously welcomed this action in today's Telegraph, but offers a note of caution with the headline, "Removing Maduro alone would be a hollow victory for America." Even the president himself has said that this well-executed plan mustn't be in vain.
Well, militarily, it was extraordinary, and it does show the reach and the skill of the American military, in this case, particularly Delta Force, but obviously supported by other military as well. But as I said, it's easier to change regime than it is to build another regime. And this is the problem. And obviously, the Americans are really reluctant to put boots on the ground. Think Afghanistan, think Iraq. But how will regime change happen in a deeply polarized country? Maduro is deeply unpopular, but he has his partisans, he has his militia, and they are not going to take this lying down. So at what point will American boots need to be on the ground, if at all? And that is a very, very explosive and very, very dangerous. But if not, we might see Venezuela disintegrate, and that's even more people moving northward to get out of the country, fueling a migration crisis. So really, It's very early in the process, and it's very, very volatile.
Martin, I wish we had longer. Thank you so much for joining us, one of the country's finest historians, with a nuanced attitude to that. Much more to come. Priti Patel, live on the show in the next hour.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 9, I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. Breaking this morning, Donald Trump unseats a sitting president, effectively kidnapping Maduro of Venezuela and his wife as they slept in bed in their guarded compound. A bold and audacious military strike watched by the leader of the free world from the luxury of his Mar-a-Lago estate. But what now for this failed socialist state? As the Nobel Peace Prize winning leader of the opposition celebrates the move, and as people take to the streets cheering on the collapse of this regime, is the world now a noticeably safer place under Donald Trump? And has he silenced his critics? Or is this, once again, America becoming the world's policeman? Plus, as fresh polling shows Reform holding their commanding lead, will 2026 be a good year for Nigel Farage? What does he need to do this year to prepare for power if he's going to become Britain's next Prime Minister? It's your job to create the Nigel Farage to-do list of 2026. Now, my priority for the next hour is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy is taking your calls, and I'm delighted to say you can text us. Just text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. This is Talk Breakfast, and I'm delighted to say that I'll be looking after this slot every Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the whole of 2026. The legend that is Jeremy Kyle begins tomorrow, and he, of course, is responsible for Monday to Thursday. So it is, in my humble opinion, the dream team. So excited about getting stuck into this, getting those truth bombs out there, representing your concerns, and hopefully perpetuating this place as the home of common sense. Now, for the show, on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we will always have Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. and this is today's offering. Surprise, surprise, another country with rich, untapped resources faces economic collapse as a result of socialism. No, I'm not talking about oil-rich Venezuela, which chose collectivism and the authoritarian might of state control over trade and free markets. No. I'm talking about the United Kingdom. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't immediately anticipate 50% inflation, capital flight, or a run on the pound. It's unlikely that Donald Trump will do what he's done in the last 24 hours and swoop in to save the UK, although, frankly, I quite like the idea. But one of the reasons why this country is in decline reflects the wider story of the West, and in particular Europe. Now, we might have exited the EU, but we're still politically and economically no different. We are part, unofficially, of a failing economic project. Why? What have we got in common with the rest of the EU? A bloated and inefficient welfare state, once established for the right reasons, as a safety net for those who cannot work, and now is a lifestyle choice, with the UK welfare budget having reached an eye-watering £350 billion. A chunk of that will be going to pay people to stay at home because they've got stress. That's right, they've got anxiety, or they've got ADHD. What is ADHD? What is it? I thought it was an Australian heavy metal band, but there you go. Across Europe, and in particular in the United Kingdom, the public, alarm clock Britain, the less than 50% of the public who put more in than they take out from the state, are now forced to pay ever higher taxes for worse public services. It's easier now to get a date with Taylor Swift than a face-to-face appointment with your local GP. And what about a dentist? Good luck with that. We haven't invested in our defence, which is why our country, alongside the rest of Europe, is far less safe. The scale of national debt in any country has a direct correlation with its ability to defend itself, which is why Rachel from Accounts' spending splurges on the work shy, her unaffordable inflation-busting pay rises in the public sector, and the further feeding of the monster of welfareism isn't just bad economics, because it's terrible economics, but it weakens us and is therefore a danger to this country and its citizens. Which is why I was horrified to read that the Adam Smith Institute, a very unfashionable group who believe in something called capitalism, I know, it'll never catch on, they've predicted that our national debt will go from 100% of the size of the economy, which is where we are now, which is already catastrophic. That's right, the debt is the same size as the economy. Well, it's projected to go to almost 300% in the years ahead. And that's without the justification that we've had in the past for such borrowing, such as the threat of Adolf Hitler in the Second World War. This time round, as we head to a national debt of 300% the size of the economy, this time there's no existential emergency, there's no Adolf Hitler, just an ideology of tax and spend, because the political class, and in particular this egregiously left-wing government, seem intent on sucking us further into the economic quicksand of low growth, high taxes, and ever more borrowing. There is so much a future administration needs to do. We require an economic, political, and cultural revolution. We've got to unilaterally stop the boats. 70,000 people have come to this country since Starmer became Prime Minister. That number must go to zero. And legal migration has got to go sub 100k every year forever. Even a net zero moratorium for 5 years wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Some of the 10 million working age adults who are not active in the economy, which is another national scandal, can work in the care homes, they can pick the fruits, and they can clean the streets. That's right, you heard me, folks. We don't have to import people. We can get the 10 million people not productive in the economy, they can get off their big fat backsides, okay? And they can work in the care homes, they can pick the fruit, and they can clean the streets. If the jobs are properly paid, I promise you, people will rise from their slumber. They'll forget about their ADHD and their stress, and they'll be reminded of the great rewards of hard work. It's far cheaper than importing folk to do these jobs who, as low-skilled labourers, will require in-work benefits and public services for the rest of their lives and will ultimately therefore be a burden on the state. Importing cheap labour is the very definition of a false economy. It's basically the strategic equivalent of a credit card or a cheap loan. And without a strong economy, you are subject to the mercy of Rolex-wearing financiers overseas, who will decide themselves how much money to lend us on a daily basis just to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, the supposedly bad orange man in the White House cuts taxes, reduces the cost of energy, brings jobs back to America, and surprisingly generates economic growth for the United States of 4.4% in a quarter of a year. 4.4% in a quarter of a year. We wouldn't get that in 3 years, let alone 3 months. So what we need to do is pretty simple. Cut taxes to grow the economy, create a business-friendly environment, axe the red tape, reverse Angela Rayner's workers' rights package, make it pay to work, not to stay at home, massively reduce the size of the state and the scope of welfare, and with caveats, checks and balances, of course, trust free enterprise as we did in the 1980s when the United Kingdom became an international powerhouse. Right now, We're not an international power. We're actually in the doghouse. The choice facing Britain is clear. Change or die. The ghost of socialism continues to haunt this great country, culturally, ideologically and economically. It continues to wreak enormous damage. It is time to get the garlic out and the crucifix and lay this ghost to rest. Because I personally am haunted by the alternative. Your reaction, 03444991000. If you like the Dolan's Dispatch, head to YouTube and subscribe to my brand new channel, Dolan's Dispatch. Georgina is in London. Good morning, Georgina.
Good morning, Mark. Well, I would have you on every morning if I possibly could.
You're far too kind.
Bless you. I think our taxes have got to be spent on building housing for our own indigenous population, Mark, before we even consider being benevolent to third world illegal immigrants. We've had migrants being housed whilst our veterans are sleeping in pop-up tents in freezing conditions, and our own housing queues for years for social housing. We've had migrants taking priority over our own in every situation, being prioritised for hospital and dental appointments over British citizens, migrants being fed, clothed and watered, whilst our own are struggling with a cost of living crisis. Our public services are non-existent. We don't mind paying our taxes, Mark, but we must be able to see what we're getting for our money. You know, we're having our taxes spent on illegal migrants coming over in boats. These people contribute nothing to either our economy or our culture. They're financially sucking this country dry of all its resources, be it dental, welfare, medical, and we're expected to put up and shut up. Well, we're sick of it. That young man, Sebastian Selleck, I would have loved to have had a sit down and a chat with him this morning, because Sebastian is delusional if he thinks that this is the way forward. Every time we've had a Labour government, this country has gone into bankruptcy, and the present government will be exactly the same. Britain has become the premier inn for all and sundry that want to illegally enter this country, and they're being welcomed with open arms by the government that has no backbone. As always, we are footing the bill. It's our money, Mark. It's our choice, and we choose not to have these people in our country. Send them back from whence they came. We are sick of carrying them.
Powerful words, I've got to say, and they'll be shared by so many of my viewers and listeners. Of course, Georgina, if those are just joining us now, let me bring them up to speed. This is an exclusive in the Daily Mail. New council houses to be built for asylum seekers in a push to end the use of hotels. Asylum seekers will be housed in newly built council houses as part of a push to end the use of asylum hotels and private landlords. Around 200 local authorities have indicated interest in a government pilot scheme that would fund the building of new properties or the refurbishment of derelict housing to make room for asylum seekers. You mentioned the homeless that we have in this country. There's also, Georgina, the small matter of 1.3 million Brits who are currently on a waiting list for social housing.
Well, I know that, and this is what really grinds my gears, Mark. The fact that we have people in this country, our own, who are waiting for social housing, and they're being put on the back burner, and these migrants are being prioritised, not only for housing, my love, but for every other benefit. It's not right, and it should not be happening. This government needs to get its priorities in order, or it needs to get out of office, because it is running this country and our people into the very dirt that once was Great Britain.
Georgina, what would you say to those who would argue that this is an inherited problem from the Conservatives, that Labour are doing their best to improve this country, that they're actually working hard to stop the boats, and that actually those who do come here and seek asylum have got to live somewhere and they're fleeing terror and persecution?
Terror and persecution, they're coming over from France. Now, the last time I heard, there was no conflict going on in France. You know, this is just ridiculous. I do understand that the Conservative government was the catalyst for what's going on now. But the Labour government have done absolutely diddly squat to solve this problem. You know, we need to get some sort of defence on our borders and sort this out. And we need to stop our lifeboat service from helping these people across the channel. You know, this is not a taxi service for illegal migrants. I've stopped all my the money I used to give to the lifeboat service, because I used to have a standing order for the lifeboat service. I've stopped it because I'm not going to put money into a service that's helping to bring this country to its knees. I'm not doing it anymore. It's ridiculous. We need to make a stand. We need to get a backbone, and we need to sort this problem out. And the Labour government are doing absolutely nothing to solve this problem, despite all their talk of we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to stop this. Honestly, they couldn't smash an egg. It's absolutely hopeless. And I'm sick of hearing the same old rhetoric from them time and again when they're doing absolutely nothing to solve this problem. It's easily solved. Get the borders manned, sort this out, and get them gone.
Georgina, I could listen to you every day. Thank you for your brilliant, brilliant call. I look forward to many conversations going forward. What a line from Georgina. Dean, can you tell our digital department about this? The UK has become the premier inn of the world for illegal migrants. Powerful stuff. Listen, the highlight of the show is always your comments, the voice notes, the calls, the texts. Keep them coming. Next up, we're going to speak to one of the country's finest journalists about a variety of things. Trump's actions in Venezuela, has it made the world a safer place? And I've also got a question for Trevor Cavan, a former legendary political editor of the Sun newspaper, which is, will 2026 be a good year for Nigel Farage? All of that is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a lot of anger around this story that new council houses will be built for asylum seekers in a push to end the use of hotel accommodation. Here's a voice note from Anna.
Anna, sorry. I said I wouldn't ever call into this show again. However, that Labour lunatic has enraged me so much about the council houses. Are you actually stupid, or are you purposely ignoring what's been spelt out to you? I'm feeding the cats at work at the minute. Can you hear them? They understand why the British people are angry. If my cats get it, with your... can't you get it? Oh, my word.
Powerful stuff. I love those cats, Anna. What about this from Tony?
Tony from Kent here. Please ask the question.
These people are arriving here illegally, are getting everything, they're getting welfare benefits, they're getting everything, and now they're going to get a new house. What about our veterans that are on the road? Ask our people there and say, what would you rather do? People that have fought for this country, paid into this country, veterans that are homeless, who would you rather put in a new home? The illegal man or your veteran that stood by this country? That's Tony from Kent. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Tony. Let's get reaction now from a total legend of Fleet Street, the former political editor of the Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, public anger is understandable in this context. New council houses to be built for asylum seekers.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, Mark. It seems to be always to have been the plan of this government that they're going to build new homes, allegedly. So far, they haven't built very many. But who is going to occupy them? Not the people who have been years on the waiting list on council house housing queues, but the migrants they can't put anywhere else. So you're going to end up with whole new communities, villages and small towns, and maybe big towns, which will be basically colonies of another country.
And Trevor, the public might accept these measures knowing that these asylum seekers have to live somewhere, but they would only accept this set of measures if the supply were coming to an end, if we saw those boat crossings ceased, and that, of course, is not the direction of travel.
No, and it's not going to be for a long time, for the foreseeable future, for as long as this government is in office. I think that the soaring numbers, they haven't been even reduced or flatlining. They're going up, and they're going up inexorably. They will continue to rise. And I think that this government has absolutely no intention of trying to seriously combat the number of people who are coming into this country illegally.
The optics of this policy and the messaging is catastrophic, isn't it? Because it's certainly not British citizens first, including the small matter, Trevor, of 1.3 million people, some of whom are listeners to and viewers of this show, who are on a waiting list for social housing.
Well, absolutely. And these are the people who are also unemployed because they can't get a fixed abode. They're not in any sort of solid environment that they can base a life on. So what we're doing is displacing those people from the what would have been the traditional means of moving into employment and residential accommodation and handing it over to people who shouldn't be here in the first place. And that is the essence of the argument. People may sympathize with genuine asylum seekers. They do not have any sympathy whatsoever for people who have barged across the whole of Europe where sanctuary is available if required, asylum is available, in order to get to this country. And what for? You have to keep asking, why do they want to risk their lives to come here? So there must be an advantage that we're offering that the rest of Europe is not.
Most definitely. Listen to this text, if you can, Trevor, from Carol in Clacton. Good morning, Mark. On the question about housing, last year my daughter found herself homeless because her private landlord wanted to sell the property. Obviously, that's his right, but the council would not help my daughter at all. And she had to live in a car for several weeks until she saved up a deposit again. She even had to rehome her pet cat. And this is the issue, the priorities of this government.
Yes, the priorities of this government is helping people who do not deserve help and not helping those who actually earn a living and pay the taxes that provide the government with the money to waste on their view of what a worthy cause is. And that is building up a resentment, I think, not just in the working classes that this government is supposed to represent, but among the employers, the firms that actually hire people, who have ceased to do so simply because it's been made too expensive for them. So you may see in the background that the television is on and the Keir Starmer is being interviewed saying the same things over and over again about another reset, talking about being still in place in 26, 27, 28. It's a horrifying prospect, and it's unfortunately quite possible that he will survive what has been, in the eyes of many, and an unavoidable challenge this spring after the local elections. There are people in the Labour Party who have now given up hope of dumping him.
Trevor, with Reform UK holding their commanding lead in the polls, what's in Nigel Farage's inbox for 2026? What should his priorities be?
Well, I think he has a number that he has to address, and steadily and carefully and visibly. That's the important thing. He needs to establish that Reform is not a one-man band, that is not just a Nigel Farage bandwagon, that there are other figures of authority and responsibility who are able to formulate policies and expel them out to the public on issues like the economy, on education, on also immigration. I think that we've got lots of heat on immigration, but as yet not very much light on exactly what we would do. So I think that what he needs is carefully thrashed out policies, costed and analysed and available for the public to scrutinise. So the other thing, of course, is that he is facing a huge challenge from everybody who is in that vested interest that opposes everything that Nigel Farage and indeed the Conservatives under Kenny Badenoch stand for, which is discipline in schools and in the prisons and so on. The sort of rigour of daily life that we came to expect up until about 25 years ago.
Trevor, before I let you go, in just a moment I'll be joined live on the show by Dame Priti Patel, the Shadow Secretary of State of Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs. She's basically the Shadow Foreign Secretary. And I'll be asking her about the events of the last 24 hours. This well-executed bloodless coup on the part of Donald Trump to remove Maduro from his rule in Venezuela. What's your appraisal of this move? How do you think it's going to pan out? Was it the right thing to do?
Well, I think that everything depends on what happens in the next few days, and Priti Patel will tell you a great deal more than I can. But I think that this is an audacious move by Donald Trump and the American armed forces to remove a dictatorship which has reduced Venezuela from one of the richest countries in the world with its oil supplies to one of the poorest in South America. And it is because of the sort of misspent governance of countries like Venezuela, and indeed I think there's a reflection of that here now in Britain, that has led to the decline of Venezuela and what is in fact a communist dictatorship. So on the basis that he is gone, that's good news. The question is who replaces him. There are a couple of acceptable democratic politicians in Venezuela. There's Edmundo Gonzalez, the opposition leader, and Maria Corina Machado, who is, I think, the Nobel Prize winner. Both of whom, if they can get a foothold and able to actually command a government, would be very good news for that region and, in fact, for world democracy.
Trevor, I hope this is the first of many on-air encounters. My thanks to legendary journalist, the former political editor of The Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Happy New Year, Trevor. See you soon. Next up, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Dame Priti Patel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:31, this is Talk Breakfast. Joining me on the line right now is the Shadow Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable Dame Priti Patel. Dame Priti Patel, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning.
And a very happy new year to you. What's your reaction as Shadow Foreign Secretary to the events of the last 24 hours in Venezuela?
Mark, first of all, we've seen what has been an incredible military operation. But fundamentally, Maduro was an illegitimate tyrant. He was an absolute oppressor who oppressed his own people. He has destroyed Venezuela, their economy. Every single aspect of that government was corrupt and corrosive. And I think now, we've got to watch what the Venezuelan people do themselves, because they're the ones that are desperate. They've been fighting for freedom. They'll want their freedom and democracy back. So I think really now we've got to, there's an element of wait and see, but we need to really dock into what could be the political next steps. We heard a lot from President Trump yesterday in terms of what he thinks the next steps are. But this is going to be quite a serious moment, I think, for Venezuela, but also now for the United States after this audacious military scheme that they put in place, basically, to, depose of Maduro and now take him for trial in New York.
Are you confident that the US president has a plan?
Well, we've only just heard the outline of this overnight, and I think it's very early yet. There's going to be an entire legal process on this whole indictment that has been put against Maduro and his wife on drug trafficking and all the other things that basically have affected America for a long time. What I would say, there are a couple of important points of context to share, though, is that we've known this could have been on the cards because of the way in which the US administration has been obviously destroying drug cartel boats. That has not been new news. It's important to note as well that the British government in the past, I mean, I know this because I was part of it. We've had operations, not military operations, but intelligence and security operations to stop drugs such as cocaine coming to our country from those Latin America routes. So if this is now going to be a drug lawsuit or case, indictment against Maduro, there could be some read across to us in terms of anything that we have helped and worked with America on, such as intelligence sharing. There was suggestions at the end of last year that the UK stop sharing intelligence with the United States because of the action America was taking. But I think the big issue right now is about Venezuela, its governance, its sovereignty, its freedom, and what path of democracy will they be put on? Because there are opposition leaders that are waiting in the wings. Maduro himself annulled that 2024 general election. So this is going to be a really big moment, and I think we have to watch what the people of Venezuela actually do.
Does it set, though, a dangerous or worrying precedent for the US to remove a sitting president of a foreign country?
I think, look, we all know the history, don't we, of American interventionism and where America is right now. They've got a very clear national security strategy in terms of what they're going to do for their America First and national interests, policy and strategy. But of course, Maduro himself was overseeing a terrible oppressive regime. No one is going to weep over the fact that he is gone. But clearly, we do all stand up for sovereign independence of countries, but also good, strong governance, which Venezuela has not had. America has made it quite clear for some time that they were going to take some kind of action. I think perhaps some countries should have anticipated this course of action. Perhaps they didn't engage with the US administration enough to understand the direction of travel. I think these are now pressing points that the UK government, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary will no doubt have in their conversations with both the President and the Secretary of State for the State Department, Marco Rubio, in America.
Priti Patel, what does it say about the UK's diplomatic standing that our Prime Minister wasn't consulted about these actions?
Well, you won't be surprised by my own view. I think Keir Starmer is incredibly weak, and I do not think he is strong enough on the international stage. And, we speak about the special relationship with America. We're Five Eyes countries. As I said, I've got a lot of history working with America on security and intelligence operations previously. I just don't think America looks to the United Kingdom in the way in which it once did. I think it speaks very badly about the strength of this Labour government's own position on the world stage. There are constantly hiding behind some of their other friends around the world, countries such as France, for example. We've seen that over decisions on Israel, their condemnatory statements that they're constantly putting out against Israel. They're never tough when it comes to talking about Hamas and terrorism or jihadism, fighting these extremist cases. They do not stand up for the Jewish community enough in the United Kingdom. They are part of the problem when it comes to anti-Semitism. So personally, I think the countries like the United States watch all of this, and they look with us as with a degree of weakness because of the incumbency in our own government. And, you know, they want to see strength back in the UK because certainly from the discussions that I've had with US friends, and I was there in November. I was there actually when the national security document was published. And again, you know, people in the British system were basically saying that they were criticising what is the national security strategy for sovereign countries. So, you know, we have to work with our allies, not just sort of stand back and hand-wring and issue statements of condemnation all the time. We have to understand what is going on there, where that axis of friendship is, where we support one another on some of these enormous challenges, and now dangerous challenges that are confronting the world.
Most definitely. Of course, the Prime Minister will argue that he's done a lot to rid his own party of anti-Semitism. He'll argue that he's trying to rebuild Britain's reputation globally following 14 years of Conservative misrule. Interesting, isn't it, Dame Priti Patel, that figures on the left in the United Kingdom and in the United States furious about the unseating of the tyrannical Maduro?
Well, I think it speaks volumes, I really do. And if I remember rightly, it was under a previous Labour leader in the United Kingdom where they were actually waxing lyrical about Venezuela as a country that we should aspire to follow, which says a great deal about socialism. And, you know, Venezuela is a very strong example of a socialist/communist government that basically succeeded to take over, be in power, be authoritarian, and is just riven with corruption. And this is the point that I make now, that the future of Venezuela is in the balance. We have to watch what the public do there, because there are plenty of operatives still in their system, some of them who are still sanctioned by the US administration, even by the European Union for corruption and for all sorts of terrible crimes, where they have basically violated their people, their country, and they've abused their own country and their citizens. These people are not fit to be in office whatsoever. So you're right about the left. The left always, you know, join hands basically for the wrong causes. They stand up for the wrong value systems, I think it's fair to say. They certainly don't speak the values and the language that you and I speak, and they do not speak and stand up for Britain and British values. And we see far too much of that, if I may say so, a lot of the time with this Labour government, in my view.
Now, your boss, Kemi Badenoch, has made very positive headlines in the last few weeks, partly in response to the budget, which was, I think, a commanding performance in the House of Commons, as well as a weekly slaying of the Prime Minister at PMQs. Things seem to be improving within the Conservative movement, an uptick, improvement in the polls, and generally better headlines. But are you still dogged by the legacy of your time in office, would you say, Dame Priti Patel?
Well, it's easy to be dragged backwards, and the point about Kemi and her vision, direction and energy is that, you know, we don't look backwards, we look forwards. We look at the challenges that confront us now in our country and with the British public and with the level of dissent that we see and hear every day. We're politicians, we go out there, we knock on doors, we meet the public frequently, we're dealing with casework, correspondence all the time. We have the finger on the pulse in terms of the public mood. We have to find solutions, obviously, for many of the challenges that our great country faces. And it's lazy politics, if I may say so, just to go backwards and just run our country down. And the point about Kemi and her strength of direction of travel and leadership is that we're finding solutions, you know, on the economy. Look at the terrible state of our economy. You may have seen that I think the Adam Smith Institute overnight published a report saying that our debt will be 3 times the size of our economy going forward. Well, we're very clear about what we need to do in terms of getting ourselves back on track fiscally, financially, so we can live within our means, delivering £47 billion of savings, reducing welfare. Look at the way welfare has spiraled out of control. You've asked about the past. We were the only party in government that tackled welfare reform, got welfare spending down, and these are the things that matter, and that credibility of having the ability to deliver, being serious and being seen as responsible politicians that put our national interests front and centre is clearly what my party is about and what Kemi is about.
Dame Priti Patel, you are no woke snowflake. You are a robustly conservative politician to your core. Do you regret the scale of legal and illegal immigration that played out whilst you were Home Secretary?
Of course, and that is why we have been very clear now, and you've asked about our direction of travel, why we have set out incredibly strong policies that involve some very big policy actions, such as leaving the ECHR. So I noticed before I came on your programme, you had a column down your screen about migrants coming to the country. If I may say, that should be illegal migrants.
Yeah.
I'm also the only Home Secretary that has used that term, illegal migrants, because the left and Labour now in government, they want to normalise all of this stuff, and it's not about normalising that. We don't have a deterrent in our country. You know my policies and my approach around a deterrent. We're talking about leaving the ECHR, leaving the ECAT, which actually enables far too many of these spurious cases to come to immigration courts and tribunals around modern day slavery, and basically where our laws and our courts and tribunals are gamed. And, you know, I brought in some big legislation on all of those areas. The legislation's on the statute books. We're ready to crack on and do that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, this is all about the type of change that our country now needs going forward, that puts Britain and the British public first and front and centre, because they're the ones paying for what are, quite frankly, the most egregious and outrageous policies that this Labour government are now putting in place.
Exiting the ECHR, a bold and laudable policy should the Conservatives win power again, Dame Priti Patel. It's a great idea. Why wasn't it a great idea when you were Home Secretary in 2022?
We've now done the work, so I think there's a big distinction to be made. We have done the work in opposition, and, you know, this is a difference, OK? So Labour were once in opposition. They did not come up with, as we're now seeing, policy solutions. We're using our time in opposition to do the groundwork as to how, and this is really important, how do we leave the ECHR? It's too easy to make facile statements saying we'll leave it. We've got the blueprint on this, what it would mean for our domestic laws in particular. This actually means that Parliament would be sovereign. So it's taking another further step with Brexit, making sure that we don't get our courts, the courts in particular, encroaching upon political decision making, which is effectively what we have taking place right now. When I was in government, and it wasn't me as Home Secretary, it were our law officers, our ministers who are law officers at the time, they were tasked with looking at various derogations of ECHR. There's no point doing that because it's too complex. You have to extract yourself, which is what we are proposing, from the European Convention of Human Rights and apply that basically to our domestic laws, and that is what we are going to do as Conservatives in government going forward, and we've got the blueprint as to how we're going to do that and the legal basis and the underpinning for that.
Dame Priti Patel, I think before we let you go, I think you were unnecessarily castigated in relation to your time in the Home Office. You were, in fact, a very robust Home Secretary. Was it your boss, Boris Johnson, that got it so wrong over immigration?
No, I think there are competing factors, if I may say so. And, I don't want to dwell on the past. You have to look at various circumstances. We had a pandemic going on. We had, new Treasury policies coming in. There are a range of issues. But the fact of the matter is, I was very robust in terms of the legislation that was put forward. And I think that's foundational. It all sits there on the
But you were undermined by your own Prime Minister, weren't you? And the well-documented Boris wave. It wasn't the Priti wave. It was the Boris wave. And I think you were let down by your boss.
if I may say so, Mark, it's also the way government departments work. It's not just down to one individual, it's the whole system of government. And, we speak about this now very publicly. Kemi speaks about this in terms of the system that we are going to change. Naming people in this way is counterproductive, because blaming people is one thing. We have to find solutions and changing the system of government. For example, look at how government departments will constantly lobby for more visas, for example. We have to have a whole system strategy, and that is effectively the position that the Conservative Party is taking very clearly now in opposition, and how we will implement this going forward in government.
Dame Priti Patel, a real delight to meet you, and I look forward to many on-air encounters in the year ahead. My thanks to the Shadow Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable Dame Priti Patel. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Breakfast.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m, at which point the brilliant Peter Cardwell takes the helm. And listen, let's catch up on another interesting voice note. This is from Martin on the issue of new houses being built for asylum seekers.
Oh my God, that's Sebastian. I'm sick of hearing his nonsense. I've heard it all before. It's the same spiel they keep throwing out. It's completely wrong. He's completely out of touch. I don't know where he lives, but he ain't living anywhere near a migrant hotel, I can guarantee you. The sooner we get rid of these idiots, the better. Thank you. Great show.
Brilliant stuff. How about this from Pauline? A great voice note from Pauline. Take it away.
Good morning, Pauline from Salford. New council houses to be built for asylum seekers. Oh, I seriously want to see that happen in Salford. We have a waiting list of people that have been born and bred in this country, have paid into the system, have got 3 kids and are living in 1-bedroom flats, and have been waiting for houses for years. So if that happens in Salford, I don't even want to imagine the consequences of the unrest. Let's just say the unrest it will cause, because this is absolutely disgusting that we are giving illegal immigrants everything. I'm self-employed and I am genuinely considering stopping work. Why should I carry on working? There's no point. I live in social housing. So why should I carry on working, paying into the system for illegal immigrants that will do nothing to help this country to stay here? I'm sorry, not happening.
Brilliant stuff. Mark has got a voice note for us.
Good morning, Mark. This is Mark from London. I'm afraid it's absolutely impossible to argue with a left-winger because they have an answer for everything, although their answer is often incorrect and with no factual base to it at all.
Powerful. And last but not least, Sharon.
Morning. I've just got to phone in this morning because I think Sebastian Sellet, I think he's terrible. He needs to go and live in some of these countries and help them out instead of staying in this country and telling us what we should think and what we should do and how we should react. He's not a British citizen of this country, I don't think, because he's against us. All he wants to do is flood the country. If he's that great, then just go out and help him in these other countries and look after him, because it's just crazy what he's just spouting. He just drives me mad. Anyway, thanks a lot. Good show. Sharon from Yorkshire.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for all the calls, the texts, the voice notes. They're going to be a very central part of Talk Breakfast. I'm delighted to say that I'll be keeping you company every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the whole of 2026. Cannot wait to get cracking. Delighted to say with me in the studio now is BBC radio legend Alex Dyke. Happy New Year, Alex.
Happy New Year, Mark.
So good to see you. Did you have a nice Christmas and New Year?
It was very nice, thank you.
Yeah. Did you put your feet out? You're a hard-working man, so did you manage to,
a little bit, yeah.
Rest your bones a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Did you overdo it on the turkey on Christmas Day?
No, not really. No, I took it pretty easy.
Your body's a temple, isn't it?
It is.
Listen, so much to get through. Well, one of the movies that people will have been watching over Christmas is a real classic, and it's Grease.
Yeah.
John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John. Some of the best songs of any musical soundtrack.
Yep.
Grease is the word.
Yeah.
Grease Lightning.
Summer Nights.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You're the one that I want.
It's basically... am I? That's good to know. Hope Mrs. Dolan isn't listening. So it's a lovely movie, and therefore there's no controversy around it, I would have thought.
Right, so trigger warnings, that's what we're talking about. So this happened last year with ITV, it's happened again. I always thought the thing about Grease is the sexual content in it, the sexual references would go over most children's heads.
Yes.
It's not that it's gratuitous or obvious, but they have put a trigger warning on it. One of them is for teenage misbehaviour.
Okay.
Right? Now, what teenagers do you know and did you grow up with that didn't misbehave at some point?
It's their job.
Yeah. So I look back at this. So in 2002, Steven Spielberg edited out the guns in E.T., right? He turned the guns into walkie-talkies for the 20th anniversary of E.T. Then he regretted it, so he put the guns back in the 30th anniversary. Because he didn't think that he should be airbrushing movie history. Now that was on the television this Christmas, and I thought TV would go with the woke version, but they've put the guns back in.
Amazing.
Another one is West Side Story. They're worried about the term tomboy. They think that is transphobic, so that's got a trigger warning on it. I mean, this film was made in 1961.
What is a tomboy? A tomboy is a girl that behaves in a more masculine way.
Yeah, when they're a child.
Right, and it's not in any way pejorative or negative, is it?
Absolutely.
I mean, you could quite argue it's quite descriptive.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a little ahead of its time.
The problem you've got now in 2026 is that if you've got a little girl who is a bit of a tomboy, then the woke lunatics in charge of our healthcare system will be like, off to the Tavistock you go.
Yeah, I know. It's scary, isn't it?
For the snip.
Yeah, it's scary. And the last one I've got for you is the Wicked sequel. Now, this one has a warning that characters may cast spells. Right?
You've got to be kidding me.
No, that's the one on the Wicked sequel. So you think
What's
of all
next? Harry Potter's got a wand?
Exactly. Harry Potter, witches, warlocks, wizards, all those Disney classics. Where's it going to end?
It's crazy. And these trigger warnings, is it not an insult to our intelligence?
It is. It's an insult to the common sense of people all around the world. I was going to say Britain, then I was going to expand it to the Western world, but people all around the world. And we have to let young viewers and young listeners discover this stuff for themselves.
I think it was the movie Goodfellas where there was a trigger warning saying some people may be smoking in this film.
Yeah.
And there's no end to it, is there? And it's very irritating to people. Why have we got to be protected? Why are we so fragile now?
Well, a few years ago, maybe we always follow America, don't we? We're always 15 years behind America, and there were a lot of lawsuits, and I think everybody is so nervous. I don't think anyone, any TV exec, thinks that Greece is dangerous, but well, let's put a warning up just in case. Then we've covered our backsides.
It gets even worse, doesn't it? Because we don't just get trigger warnings which you can skip through. We're now prevented from watching certain things that we used to enjoy.
Yes.
Certain episodes of Little Britain. The whole of Come Fly With Me, which was the David Walliams, Matt Lucas follow-up to Little Britain, that was taken off the airwaves altogether. You know, scenes from Gone with the Wind removed. So we're not even given agency to watch these things and choose to be offended or not.
No, and if you're a big fan, say, as I am, of the Sweeney, and you like those classic shots of London...
Is it Get Your Trousers on Your Nicked?
Get Your Trousers on Your Nicked. Listen, son, we're the Sweeney, and we haven't had any dinner.
Oh, that's
so unless
good.
you... So if...
you look a little bit like Bodie and Doyle this morning, I've got to say.
That's the Professionals.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
John Thor, Dennis Waterman, right?
That's the Sweeney. But if you like the Sweeney, and if you like Dennis Waterman in Minder, and you watch them on ITV4, you will notice they've been edited.
No.
So there's a great line in the Sweeney where he says, well, we'll go round and we'll feel his collar. A pound for a penny, I bet you he's a godbotherer. Right? Now, that is a great line about someone who's a Christian.
Correct.
And it's quite funny. But it's now gone from the television show.
It's terrible. You're adulterating art. The same thing happened to Only Fools and Horses as well. That was edited and adulterated with. Sometimes, by the way, you'll have something that's removed which was politically correct, but the people in charge are so stupid they don't realise that. So I'll give you an example. Fawlty Towers, there's an episode in which Basil Fawlty's racism is highlighted in the storyline, okay? The storyline is he's got a doctor who's a man of colour, and Basil Fawlty's basically freaked out because his doctor is a man of colour, right? Well, what they've done when they wrote that episode is to mock Basil Fawlty's racism.
I totally get.
So it's actually a woke storyline saying racism is bad. That episode was removed for a period of time on UK Gold.
I totally get that. However, the N-word is so poisonous, they've edited that out when the Major says it, and I see that one.
And
I agree with.
That's different, and I think that's the language that, you know. But just Peter Codwell, I mean, just help me out with this. You know, Fawlty Towers, the episode.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I know the one you're talking about. It's a good episode.
It's basically a very progressive storyline, highlighting a guy that's stuck in the past with archaic values.
And that's the point of Basil Fawlty. He's a sort of, you're not meant to have sympathy with him. You're meant to dislike him. You're meant to have some sympathy with him for some things and see the frustrations that he sees. But his attitudes are prehistoric, and that is the point of the episode. It's a very, very good episode, and actually we're at risk of losing some of the lessons on the subtlety of that.
Like when exactly, and also the very woke left-wing progressive message. I mean, they don't, you know, literally shooting themselves now in the foot, aren't they? The other one
they can't see that because of their own hypocrisy.